Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. This is the first live show of 2021. Can you even believe that we are at 2021? So thrilled to be here with you. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm already out of breath, but I'm excited to be here with you guys on what I hope will be an exciting new year where we are able to accomplish more. I am trying really hard to be as positive as possible and in light of everything going on, and remembering, I had some time off, so I'm a little bit better slept, but I'm trying to remember what has worked for me in the past. And I know that when my child was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5, I felt like, and believe me, the 4 months leading up to him getting the diagnosis, I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. What I found a little bit at a time as we journeyed on our way was that there were things I could do. There were things that I couldn't do about some things, but there were other things that I could do. And when we applied ourselves as a family to the things that we could do, things got better and better and better and better. So, and I've always said, if I could learn and apply, if I could take what I learned from autism and apply it to all the other areas of my life, that I would be a happy camper, a happy, productive camper. And I have to relearn that lesson on a regular basis. So I'm here as a student learning. I'm here with all of you. I know that some of you, good morning, Meenakshi. I'm not sure if I said that right, but good morning to you. I'm here with you as a student and hoping to learn more and to keep, I wrote this morning in my morning journaling, I was like, I feel like Dory, just keep swimming and Finding Nemo, right? So thrilled to be here with you guys. We are going to be live for this hour. We've got a great show planned for you. There are lots of ways that you can watch the live show and lots of ways that you can connect with us. Let me remind you of some of them. If you're watching us live right now, you're probably watching on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, or Twitter. And those are all great platforms. And we currently have a connection so that if you want to, let's say you're watching us on Facebook Live and you want to ask a question or you want to make a comment or you just want to yell into the void, this is a safe space in which to do that as long as we're saying nice things and not derogatory things, right? Good afternoon, Deborah. We're so thrilled that you're here with us. And so you can shout out into the void and we will catch what you have to say, right? Because we're live on all 4 of those platforms. Now, the podcast of the show will exist on those platforms later on in recorded version. And then you can watch us podcast and you can watch we are fast approaching our 10th anniversary of doing live shows. So you can check out our library of extensive videos, and that can be found at autism-live.com, or you can find us pretty much anywhere people podcast. We have a brilliant YouTube channel where things are broken down into playlists. So if there's a certain type of video you like you're all about the jargon of the day, we've got you. If you are not about jargon of the day and you just are here for the recipes, we got you. There's a playlist for that too. If you just want to see the Ask Dr. Doreen's, oh my goodness, have we got you. And if you just want to see our interviews with Temple Grandin or with other guests, or let's say that you have a topic that you're like, I want to see what Temple says about toilet training, but I also want to see what Dr. Grampy Shea says. And I want to see, what 1,000 other people had to say about toilet training. You can search by any of those things. So I want to remind you that we are here free for you. And because we're available in all those places 24/7, I just hope that it's a resource for you. That is really what the mission of this show is to provide information and inspiration. So if it's 2 a.m. in the morning your time and you're like, I just don't know what to do when my child is tantruming, we got you. And it's all free. And I'm really, really proud of that. So check it out. Uh, Deborah says, I've taken a course with Family First and gotten my certificate a few weeks ago. So I'm thankful for you people. Well, how lovely. I don't know what Family First is, but did you get a certificate for being, I'm not sure what you got a certificate for. Did you get it for being a registered behavior technician or a BCAT or something else entirely? But I'm very excited for you and I'm thankful for you as well, for you being here. Because, it takes a village and you guys are part of my village. I just hope I'm not the village idiot. Uh, sometimes I'm not sure, jury is out on that. But I like to enjoy myself and have a laugh at myself from time to time. And I'm thrilled that you guys are here with me to do that as well. Okay, so today is Monday, and a little bit later on today, we have our friend and expert, Bonnie Yates, who's a special education attorney. She's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. But we like to kick Mondays off with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are the experts talking about. What does this have to do with us? What does this have to do with our family? How on earth are we supposed to wade through all of this because it can feel overwhelming? Well, we have the philosophy here that we're just going to take one word at a time. First, we give you the actual definition. Then, whenever possible, I make fun of that definition because that's about as useful as it is. And then we give you a working definition. And often I give you a whack-a-noodle explanation of what it could mean in your life, what it has meant in a lot of people's lives. But we try to give you that beginning understanding of it. If you don't get it the first time, don't worry about it, because sometimes you got to see a little bit of it to understand it. But then at a certain point, I guarantee you'll go, oh, I get it. I get what that crazy lady was talking about. That makes sense to me now, right? So we take it just a little bit at a time. So today's jargon term, and I think Traven's getting ready to show it, is ABA, because it's the first live show of the week. And so I wanted to get back to basics. This is a term that we use a lot here on the show. And I know in December, I said something about ABA, and one of our viewers said, what is that? And I was like, oh, right, I got to remember that people have their child get diagnosed every day of the week, right? And they come in and they don't know what ABA is. I certainly didn't know. So let's take a look, ABA, and see what it stands for. Our actual definition for ABA. You ready? Uh, it's stuck. There it is. Ooh, it's lengthy. ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, is the application of the principles of learning and motivation from behavior analysis. It employs procedures and technology derived from scientifically demonstrated principles of behavior to increase socially significant behaviors and decrease unwanted or inappropriate behaviors. Well, now it's all clear, right? What in the heck does this mean? I'll tell you what, the first time I looked at this, I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what this means, right? Applications of the principles of learning and motivation from behavior analysis. Well, applied behavior analysis, that sort of makes sense, right? But it doesn't get me any closer to knowing what it is. Employs procedures and technology from scientifically demonstrated principles of behavior. More behavior. Okay, whatever. But here's the part that I find interesting and of interest to me: socially significant behaviors and decrease unwanted or inappropriate behaviors. So, if you are any of us, doesn't matter if you are on the spectrum, off the spectrum, if you want to learn something, let's say, you want to go cross country skiing and you've never done it before, and you want to learn how to do that. There are lots of different methods to learn something. But ABA is a method of teaching And it's considered one of the best ones. In fact, let's move on to our working definition. And then we'll and then I want to get to a question that just came in. So, comment that just came in. ABA is a proven method of increasing or teaching desired behavior and reducing unwanted behavior. Now, this can be a little controversial, which is why I want to talk about it, because who decides what the unwanted behavior is? Because what you think is unwanted behavior may not be unwanted behavior to the person. And I want to make sure that we are talking about this in a really respectful way. Let's say that I say that I want to learn cross country skiing, and I'm going to pick a teacher whose teaching methods are going to help me to cross country ski. I don't want somebody who's just going to be mean to me. I don't. I'm not interested in that. And as a human being, I think none of us should be interested in that, right? I want somebody who's going to help motivate me so that I want to do a good job, not just get it done, but that I want to do a good job. Now, there are certain behaviors that I need to learn to do to be able to be a good cross country skier, and I don't know what they are. And I may have taken a class before and not been successful at it. Does that mean that I am incapable of learning cross country skiing? No. In fact, ABA says the student is never wrong, that if something is if we're not able to teach the individual, then we need to change the way we are teaching. This is one of the basic principles of ABA. All people are able to learn. They learn at different rates and with different motivations. But in ABA, we're going by what actually works to motivate the student to do something. And what we have learned through extensive decades of research is that we actually learn better when we are rewarded. Now, stop for a moment and think about how it would change your life if every way that you learned was through reward. Because right now in life, we have two different things. They talk about the carrot and the stick, right? That sometimes dangling a carrot in front of somebody is a way to teach them something. And other people like to punish, like that's the symbol of the stick, right? ABA says the carrot works better. And that's just the truth. If people are using punishment with ABA, they are not doing good quality ABA. I'm just saying. Now, punishment is there's a lot of discussion about what is punishment and what isn't punishment. We can talk about that another day. But if I want to learn how to be a good cross country skier, I'm going to want somebody who is motivating me through praise and through rewards that are meaningful to me, and somebody who notices the things that I'm doing that are not successful towards my goal. Now, I don't need, if I'm learning cross country skiing, I'm not learning downhill skiing. So I don't need somebody to teach me everything, right? But if I'm doing a behavior where I'm rolling my ankles out and the person who's teaching me is like, well, you can cross country ski that way, but if you want to be somebody who's really going to go far, we want to start to work on rolling our ankles in. Does it mean that I'm wrong that my ankles roll out? No, but if my goal is to cross country ski, I don't want that to happen. So that's where we get into this, what is socially significant? So when ABA seeks to help people on the spectrum and off the spectrum, I just want to keep drilling that home. It isn't just for people who have autism. It just happens to be wildly effective for people on the autism spectrum in addition to everybody else. Okay? It's an age-old science, was not invented for autism. It's just used very heavily for autism because it's very effective. But the main thing that ABA is doing is teaching people skills that they weren't able to learn in another way. Let's say that we want the individual to be able to do self-care. We want them to be toilet trained. We want them to brush their own teeth. We want them to be able to zip up their own pants, wipe their own tuchus, right? These are all skills that we know when a person learns, they have more autonomy in their life. So if possible, we want to teach all individuals, if possible, we want to teach those kinds of skills to someone. We might see unwanted behavior that is like, taking feces and smearing it. Now, I want to be clear. Taking feces and smearing it is really like, nobody really wants to be around that, but that's a form of communication. That person is telling you something, and we need to be respectful of that. But their life will be easier if they are not smearing poop and if they are having a different way of telling what it is that they want whatever it was that they were communicating through the smearing of the poop. So ABA done well, quality ABA increases the behaviors surrounding skills that we want to see for this individual or that individual wants for themselves, and it decreases unwanted behavior. We all have behavior that is not serving us. It might be that you are procrastinating. It might be that you smoke or that you overeat or that you're drinking too much or whatever. We all have behaviors that we would like to decrease. ABA is very good at this. So, somebody wrote in and said, "Hi, I have high functioning autism and I just learned what ABA is." I just want to put the asterisk there that a lot of people talk about ABA and there's a lot of bad press out there about ABA. Part of it is because some people do ABA and it's not high quality ABA. And that's just the truth. You have to be very careful that you're doing high quality ABA. Also, there are people who are so interested in the science of ABA that they lose sight of the fact that they're treating people and individuals. It's very important to be on the lookout for those people and to avoid those people. I'm just going to be calling those people out this year. That's what I'm doing this year. But good quality ABA takes into account the individual and their feelings and what is important to them and what they are trying to communicate. And it seeks to give them skills that will be important to them long term and to reduce behaviors that are preventing them from getting to the things that they want to do. Now, this is a little bit dicey when we're talking about a 3-year-old because what a 3-year-old wants to do is not necessarily what's best for them long term. Some of it's very important. It's very important that a 3-year-old learns to play. It's very important that a 3-year-old also learn how to communicate their needs. And it's if you're doing ABA properly, it will be very reinforcing for the 3-year-old to learn how to communicate their needs in the most functional way that they can. And it can be done by rewarding them for doing it, not by punishing them. This is what is most important to me in my life is right now, aside from my family, is letting people know what's possible when you have good quality ABA. It is good for you. It is good for me. And I know I didn't say at the beginning of the show, but this entire show is meant for the autism community, which starts for individuals who are on the autism spectrum. I always say they're the beating heart of our community. But I also include in that community absolutely everyone who loves those individuals and wants to help those individuals to get all the things that they deserve in life, the housing, the ability to love who they love, the ability to work, the ability to have and communicate their feelings, all of those things, which I think are super important. I think it's important not to overlay on and say to them, you must speak. I don't think that that is what good at quality ABA is about, but good quality ABA is about how can we create an environment in which you can communicate at the highest level that you can with everyone else. That to me is essential, but it's not the only thing. Good morning, Amanda. I'm so glad to see you here. Anyway, that's my soapbox. ABA, good quality ABA is one of the best things there is on the planet. Bad quality ABA is one of the worst things on the planet. And I'm all about being, Ghostbusters and weeding out where that bad ABA is and calling it out. Because I think if you don't know, if you've never seen it, of course you would look at bad ABA and go, all ABA is bad. And I'm all about, let's show you some good ABA. It's easier said than done to show you good ABA because people have their privacy rights. In any case, moving on, because I'm going to still be late for Bonnie. Okay, so we always have a question of the day for you. And I love this question today because, people talk about New Year's resolutions and all that. I'm not as interested in that. Today, I want to know, what's your word for 2021? I always try to have a word for each year that is like the thing that I focus on. Now, last year, my word was edit. That was a mistake. No, I mean, maybe not. Maybe it was prophetic. because I wanted to make sure that I was just focusing on the things that I wanted to focus on. And then along comes pandemic. And I was forced to do that. So I don't know whether it was not what I would have picked. Let's say that. But I did, I edited, and I just focused on, I guess, what I was supposed to focus on. Now, this year, my word for this year is progress. Temple Grandin said something to me in the middle of last year that ended up being really important to me. We have adopted my friend Joanne Laura, who passed away last June. We adopted her dog when she was passing away. And I have a dog that doesn't like to be with anybody else, especially other dogs. And I just was at my wit's end about 3 months into it. They couldn't be in the same room. And I said to Temple Grandin, I said, oh, because she's so good with animal behavior. And I said, I just don't know if it's ever going to work out that they can ever be in a room together. And she said, I said, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm using all the principles of ABA. I'm rewarding them for being close to each other. I'm doing all of these things, but I just don't know if it's ever going to work out. And she said to me, are you making progress? And I said, oh, it's so incremental, Temple. And she said, it doesn't matter. If you're making progress, stay the course. And I thought, oh, sometimes I lose sight of that it's the small little progress over a period of time. And I stayed the course, and these two dogs are totally capable of being in the room together. Last night, they were giving each other kisses. It's crazy. Somebody said my word for 2021 is hopeful. Yes. Okay. Somebody says goals is my word. This I know I can accomplish so many goals this year, and I'm so excited. That's the way to be, isn't it? I love that. We're going to talk more about that on Thursday. So write in and let us know, what is your word for 2021? What's the word that you're, plonking down on? I'm plonking down on progress, not perfection, progress, because we'll get there if we have progress. Okay. We also have a topic of the week, and our topic this week is refresh, restart, renew. I don't know if you guys know this. I don't talk about it as much anymore, but I used to be a school teacher. I started out as a college professor, and then eventually after 9/11, I went back into the regular classroom. I taught English for grades 7 through 12 for a few years, right around the time that I was having my son. And one of the things that I always thought of when I was teaching is that there are automatic resets all the time. Like every Monday is a new opportunity to do something different. Every semester, every quarter, every year is a new day to start something new. My son just since we started the show, started his first class of the last semester of his high school career. And I was like, that's kind of momentous, right? But we repeatedly are given an opportunity to push the restart button. And it's a big one at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year, to push the restart, refresh, renew button. The truth is, you can do it on any day of the week at any time. Like, it's all a little bit of a lie that we need to wait until it's a new year, or we need to wait until it's a Monday. We really don't. But since we're here, let's take advantage of it. Oh, somebody else says, my word is patience. I need to learn how to be more patient. And they said, welcome back. Feliz year. Yes. Feliz año. I'm so glad that you're here with us. And so let's push the refresh, restart, renew button. And, sometimes it's just really important to pull things out of the closet and look at them, whether it's literal or metaphorical. Like, what are you doing? Is it working? Are you seeing progress? Are you where you want to be? Like, if you aren't, is it possible that you can push refresh, restart, renew? If you could, what would your life look like? If you could let go of some stuff, what would it look like? If you could be in a place of peace and happiness, what would it look like? Because a lot of times, even though it doesn't seem like it, it's a choice. It's a choice that, it's that Abraham Lincoln quote about most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And Sometimes I make up my mind to be miserable. And when I do, I see it's like they say our brains are assumptive computers. So if I go, I'm really angry, all the world shows me, oh, there's a lot to be angry about. There absolutely is. And if I decide to think I'm happy and at peace, the world shows me all the things that I have to be grateful for. So I don't have a choice in a lot of things, but I have a choice of what I choose to think today and how I choose to react. And I can, if the morning is already blown and shot and been horrible, I can choose to click the refresh, renew, restart button at any point. I can do that with one breath, with one thought, and then we can start anew. So, we're going to be talking about that this week because it's like do overs, right? And today is a great day to start over. I'm just looking to see. Yes, I'm seeing many of the comments that you guys are writing in. Want to remind you guys that you absolutely can write in on any of the platforms that you're watching us live right now, and it shows up in real time. We are going to be joined in just a minute here by the fabulous Bonnie Yates, and she is a special education attorney. She works with a wonderful law firm that I'm going to ask her to tell us all about. And we we see that there are a set of different questions for her as a special education attorney in COVID than ever before. So we're so thrilled that we have her. Okay, somebody says I'm having a hard time understanding how to refresh, restart, and renew. Just curious. So I've got 2 minutes before Bonnie is here. So it can be as simple as 3 breaths. So you sit someplace, you put your feet flat on the floor, you put your hands resting somewhere that's comfortable, whether it's on top of the desk, on top of the arms of your chair, on your thighs, or resting between your legs. Someplace that's comfortable and that you get an opportunity to let your shoulders be as relaxed as they can be. Mine are permanently in coat hanger status, but as relaxed as they can be. And you allow your belly, instead of having to constantly pull it in, you allow your belly to be soft and you inhale to whatever extent that you can and push it just a little bit further, and you exhale. And you exhale until you've emptied it all out. And sometimes it can even force you to cough, and that's okay because it means you're moving gunk up and out of your lungs. And you do that 3 times. Now, if you really want to get a good refresh, restart, you can do it 10 times. If you find that your attitude, I think we'll all find ourselves a little bit more centered after those breaths because it calls you into being here. And the truth of the matter is that sometimes our emotions and being stuck happens because we are either in something that happened not during this moment or something that we are thinking about in another moment that might happen. And it's really important to get ourselves present here right now. I guarantee you, if you have the time to take 3 breaths, then things are okay right now. When things are really horrible, like the things that are unimaginable that are horrible, you don't have time to take a breath. So if you've got the time to take the 3 breaths, I guarantee you that you will come into being now and you will go, okay, in this moment in time, things are not that bad. Now, if you find that you want to do more than that and you have more time to do that, I think it's great to use your hands because when you connect a thought to a physicality, it's more powerful. I don't know why. They've done research on it and it's the truth. So if you use your hands and you think, you do 5 breaths, maybe 5 breaths in and out, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But then you think of 5 things to be grateful for. Think of 5 people that you love. Think of 5 things that you'd like to do today and just play that game with yourself for 5 positive assumptive things, right? Because 5, if you're assuming, I say positive assumptive because you're assuming that there are positive things. So if I say to myself, what are the 5 things that I have to be grateful for today? I can be in the worst mood in the world, right? But if I force my brain into thinking, all right, what am I grateful for today? I got to shift. I can't constantly, be in that lane. I got to shift over into the lane about, all right, well, what am I positive for? And I've dealt with people before who are like, I got nothing to feel positive for. Nothing. There's nothing I have to feel positive for. And it just takes a second to think, wait a second, because we all know it could be worse, right? We know people who have it worse. So you think, I'm grateful that I'm alive and I'm here. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my child and for their health, right? We're already at 4 if we do that, right? And I'll bet you can think of at least one more thing. And if your child isn't healthy today or you're not healthy today, you can say, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful that I can walk. I'm grateful that I can breathe. And it forces you to think differently. So that's just like a very but that's a simple way: refresh, renew, restart. It resets your brain. I see that somebody else said focus is my word, and keeping myself motivated to add something to my son's life. I love that. Okay. I see that Bonnie Yates has joined us, and I'm thrilled to have her join us. As I mentioned, she is a wonderful special education attorney, and Bonnie is with the Toner Law Offices, and I'm going to ask her to tell you about that. Good morning, Bonnie. How are you?
Everybody, happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Shannon. Yeah, the Toner Law Offices. Okay, we are a 7-attorney firm with offices in San Jose in Southern California. And we basically do all kinds of education matters, including special education, higher education. We advise people about the regional center. If you've got a case in Northern or Southern California and you want to have a independent, personalized consultation, go to our website, fill in the forms, and somebody will get back to you within 24 hours. On this show, we try to teach you about your rights and your entitlement under the IDEA Section 504 and other laws, so that when you go into an IEP meeting, you feel like you know more than you started out knowing, and so the process isn't as intimidating. But since we're at the start of a new year, and to the extent that we have any new parents watching, I want to tell you, when I started doing this, which was in 1998, Maureen Graves, who's a wonderful person and a very well-known special education attorney, said to me, Bonnie, this is like a vast area of the law, and there's always more to know. And I don't really try to do too many other things, because just to be good at this, I kind of have to work at it all the time. And, I would just like to observe that that's true. Every week, there are new decisions from all different jurisdictions. And since IDEA is a federal program, federal laws from other states can be applicable. Every month, there are new decisions from the Office of Administrative Hearings that we, the attorneys, try to read so that we know what the law is and also what issues we're likely to be successful on. And then usually once a week, I go in and I look at the COVID roundup stuff that Special Ed Connection puts out. But last night I was just looking at their topical index. There are literally so many areas that I would love to talk about and share with you. There's no reason this program has to be redundant. There's so much to know. So why am I saying all that? When you go to an IEP for the first time, it's usually a really rough experience. And I think it's rough because you're obviously upset about the fact that you're in an IEP meeting for your child. You certainly weren't contemplating that when you were pregnant. But the other reason is that people don't stop to explain things. They're pretty quick to use abbreviations and not define them. They have a lot of stock phrases. They don't explain them. And you're supposed to be able to participate meaningfully. And so to the extent that you all are gearing up for a Zoom IEP meeting in the next few months, just know that you should always send written notice, 24 hours written notice, and tell them that you're going to record the meeting. And take a stab at reading your parent rights. And if you don't understand them, get somebody to explain to you what they mean. And then when you go into that IEP meeting, if they start going too fast or rushing you, or being unwilling to explain things that you ought to be able to have be explained, tell them, listen, I understand that this process is supposed to be a process that's parent friendly and that parents should feel comfortable to ask questions, make suggestions, even politely disagree. And I need to do that in order to be able to meaningfully represent my child's interests in this meeting. Do not let people patronize you. Don't let people talk down to you. Don't let people rush you. People say to me a lot, I have a question and it might be a stupid question. There are very few stupid questions in this business, and there are a lot of questions. So, you know, that's really what I'm hoping that the show helps you do, is just feel a little less stressed and a little more comfortable, because I don't want to depress anybody, but my experience of being a special ed parent and everything it did to me psychologically changed me. I am a different person today, and I'm 62 years old, so a long time has passed since I had my initial special ed journey. It changes you. It's really difficult, and we can have sympathy for the people in those meetings who come in and they're overworked and they don't have the right tools and they don't have the support. We can see their basic humanity, but we're human beings too. And we're going through a process that's really painful, and we shouldn't get beaten up a second time. The diagnosis is enough. So
Amen to that.
that's my intro for 2021.
Amen to that. And when we have knowledge, it's power, and we don't have to be as fearful, I think. You certainly over the years helped me many times, Bonnie, so that I felt walking into those meetings that I didn't have to be afraid, that I knew what I was there for, I knew what mission I was on, and I was confident that that the law was in my favor and getting what my son needed, and that I was going to be emerge victorious with what he needed. Sometimes it took longer, and sometimes I cried tears over what we had to do to fight for it. But I'm grateful that I had someone like you in my corner who had the knowledge when I didn't.
Well,
So
I mean, that said, aren't you glad that you're in an era now where you aren't going to IEP meetings?
yeah, I'm although I have gone to IEP meetings with friends as support,
Yeah,
and
but that's
oh,
totally different from the
totally
experience
different.
being a parent and all the emotions that develop as you move toward your IEP meeting. Let's say if it's Monday and you have your meeting on Friday. It took me a long time, and I mean like maybe 5 years before I could say to myself, I'm going to go to this meeting and I'm not going to cry afterwards.
Yep. I think I probably 5 to 7 years for me. And then they caught me off guard in one year and I went home and cried anyway. So no, I definitely think I'm with you. This has changed me too. I think in some ways it's changed me for the better, but it changed me nonetheless. And there were tears on the path. But
Oh, I'm sure it changed you for the better. I mean, look at who you are and what you do today. But it changed you.
yeah, it sure did. It sure did. Somebody wrote in and said, because they've identified themselves as being high functioning on the spectrum, and they said, those were the days of IEPs. I always loved going to my IEP back in high school. That makes me happy that they loved going to their IEP. That gives me some hope. But we've got some questions. So shall we launch into the questions,
Yeah.
Bonnie?
You read, I respond.
Okay. So first question. My question is about inclusion. What are the reasons not to include? My son has a qualifying diagnosis and an IEP. We are getting ready for his triannual, and I just got the reports from the school. We were hoping for more inclusion, working toward full inclusion. We thought the school was on the same page. They aren't. They are recommending that he have less inclusion because they say the concepts will be too hard. They say he doesn't need an aid because he has no behavior issues. He can't do the work. This is fourth grade. I feel like they gave up. We got a tutor during COVID, and he has already surpassed his goals for this year. In fact, he has already surpassed his reading goal on the proposed IEP.
Ooh.
They are they are giving the credit for this to the teacher, not our tutor. How can I turn this around? Can I ask them to put him in a gen ed with differentiated curriculum and an aide to keep him on task? He would need additional support outside the class. How do I ask for this? A tutor, a study hall, RSP? I also hate the testing they did. I feel like it is slanted toward their opinion of him. Our tutor has clearly shown he can do so much more than what they are pushing for. Thank you for any advice.
Well, the writer of this question gets the first award of 2021 for the best question with the most really salient issues in it. Okay. So, first of all, the preference in the law is for inclusion. Okay. The district has, if you look at your IEP document, like in California anyway, there's something on the pages called an LRE analysis. They are supposed to be considering what is the least restrictive environment that can work. And it starts with the presumption that general ed can work. And if you need supports and services in general ed, they can't put you in special ed and say it's expensive to give you a one-to-one academic aid, which people have academic aids. People don't just have behavior aids. But one of the things you could ask for is you could ask for an inclusion assessment, or you could ask for an inclusion facilitator to be brought onto the case so that somebody that knows how to do inclusion could consult to the IEP team and figure out how to set this up so he can be in general ed. Based on what you're saying, it really sounds as if they have underestimated his capability. Now, you ask the question, can you be in general ed and have a modified or adapted curriculum? You can. An adapted curriculum would be a curriculum that gives you the same concepts and the same work, but less of it. A modified curriculum in gen ed, which is less favored because obviously one of the benefits, if you're going to be in gen ed and you're a fourth grader, would be being able to access the curriculum. Although the other factor that weighs heavily if you don't have behavior problems is social benefit. But yes, you can be in general ed and you can have a curriculum that's individually tailored for you. If your son or daughter has already surpassed not only their IEP goals, but even the proposed reading goal, then that means to me that your district's in trouble. They haven't offered FAPE. The IEP they constructed for the child was not appropriately ambitious, which is the language of Andrew F. So I think you need to ask for an IRE, an independent educational evaluation at district expense for psychoed and cognitive, because I think that that's going to help you convince them that he should be or she should be able to be mainstreamed. As far as this outside support, they won't usually pay for a home tutor, but you could definitely have RSP support during the week. You could have a period a day. You could have somebody push into the gen ed setting. It's all very doable. It's all very doable, and your instincts are very correct. What's going to be hard for you is just to push back against this sort of phalanx of adults that don't want to do this. And they don't want to do it because it's more work for them, and they don't want to do it because it's more expense for them. But it sounds to me like you've got a really strong case that they need to do something different.
Okay. You said something in the middle there that I got to stop and go back because it's what a lot of people are having a problem arguing right now. Schools are saying that they don't have to give an educational aid. Their aids are only for behavior problems. And it's like
That's not true. That's not true. We know there's such a thing as a health and safety aid for somebody that has a trach or a feeding tube or is in a wheelchair or needs a catheter. It's absolutely not true that the only aids that exist are for behavior. I mean, in theory, for if you need an aid to access the curriculum and you can access the general ed curriculum, you absolutely can have an academic aid. And one of the mistakes that we made, and I've said this in the show before, one of the mistakes we made when we started getting ABA in school was we allowed it to be characterized, at least in California, as a behavioral service. Now I know why, but really that's not what it was. In the good old days in the 90s, let's say when my son was in school, there weren't these kinds of limitations on what the aide did, and that aide did everything for him. Did the academics, did the social, did the behavior. And that's really the way that, the card curriculum is intended to work. It's teaching to every area of neurological skill deficit. So it's not about behavior only. But like if your kid has behaviors, they're going to come up with some other reason why you can't have an outside behaviorist. If your kid has academic needs, now they're all of a sudden saying, oh, well, if only it were behavior, then we'd give you an aid for behavior. Also, are we sure it's not for behavioral deficits? Because those would be behaviors. If your child isn't socializing at age level, wouldn't those be behaviors? But you've got a problem that has a bunch of horns. I don't know what state you're in, but I think you should talk to an attorney.
Okay. You also brought up getting the independent evaluations, and this next question goes along with that. When you ask the school to get an outside evaluator, do you get any say in who it is? I'm afraid that it will be someone the school has a relationship and it will just waste my child's time.
You are not required to use the people on the district list. You can use somebody from outside of that list if they have the same qualifications as a district person. And typically they have a list of people who aren't employed by the district, but that they have a contract in place with. 99% of the time when I go down those lists, I don't use those people, and we could have a whole show on why that is. But occasionally, for some reason, somebody slips through the cracks, and you get a great person on the list, and they do the evaluation, and it's amazing. I mean, Abby Rosenberg, I'm mentioning her on the show. She's a speech therapist. She's down in Orange County. She was on the list for a client who's in the San Gabriel Valley. She did one of the best speech evaluations I've ever seen at district expense. So I don't really understand why they're letting her do that, but it's great for my client,
And I love that. Okay, so we can say I don't want somebody on the list, I want somebody else.
Totally.
Okay.
If we need to do another show on IEEs, we always can.
We might need to. Okay, next question. I believe my child's team at school has been making decisions that are outside his IEP and were never discussed with me. They changed the amount of time he was in inclusion. They are arguing this was necessary due to COVID and distance learning. Can they just decide to do that?
Can you read the last two sentences again, please?
Yes, they are arguing that this was necessary to have him change the amount of time he was in inclusion due to COVID and distance learning. Can they just decide to do that? Don't they have to do an IEP meeting to change that?
No, they don't have to do an IEP meeting, but they do have to give you prior written notice.
And if they didn't?
And then it's a denial of FAPE. It's a change of placement without an IEP meeting or parental consent. But a lot of the districts now have been using the prior written notice rather than amending the IEP or holding an IEP meeting. And I think that's because they have so many IEPs to do. Yeah. But if you got nothing and you found out about it via the back door, that's another one where it'd be nice to have you supplement your question and tell us what things they changed.
It says that they changed the amount of time that he was in inclusion. I don't know whether they upped it or
presumably not. But
right.
But that's going to come down to how the IEP was written and whether they gave you notice. I mean, the prior written notice statute is very clear, and we can go over it on the show next week if you want. But it says anytime the district proposes to initiate or change, and then it says the eligibility, identification, assessment, placement, so on, they have to give you written notice. So that's a change in placement. If you cut your gen ed minutes by 25%, that's a change in placement. And for what it's worth, I don't really understand why they would have to cut your gen ed minutes, because there are dozens and hundreds of kids across the country that are in Zoom meetings all day for general ed. It's not as if general ed decreased. I just think it doesn't add up. You should ask them for write them a letter and say, I need prior written notice on these changes you made to my child's IEP.
Okay. And then I didn't send you this question, but I've gotten probably 3 or 4 comments in the last week from people who are telling me that the school is saying that their child no longer, different people and in different states, that their child no longer needs OT. And we're talking about kids that are in kindergarten and first grade. And I'm wondering if this is a trend, if this is something that you're seeing in Southern California, and is this because of COVID? I've never heard of schools trying to cheat a kid out of at least their OT.
I,
I just like,
I suspect that it is because um, that's not a service that's easy to deliver virtually. If it's fine motor, there's going to be hand over hand stuff. If it's gross motor, you're obviously going to be working with suspended equipment. It really, I think we all have learned that generally speaking, distance learning is a problem for more people than it's helpful. But even within that larger framework, um, it's clear that doing certain types of interventions would be harder. And I think that's the reason you're getting that. If we write this out of the IEP, then we don't have a problem with noncompliance and so on.
right.
So,
But parents should fight that tooth and nail, should they not, Bonnie?
well, if your child needs occupational therapy, just know that if they don't get it while they're young, by the time they're 12, the district's going to say it's too late to teach you handwriting and printing and all that. We just want you to keyboard. So you really do have to get it now.
Yeah. But if they're saying your child no longer needs it, how do we fight that, Bonnie? Is that a thing where we go, show us
You ask
where
for
they?
you ask for an IEE.
Okay.
If they're
So
proposing
we
to
go
end
right
the
back to it.
service, they need to demonstrate. I mean, first of all, if they propose to end the service and you don't agree and you invoke stay put, they can't end the service. But secondarily, in order to resolve the dispute, an outside evaluation to look at their, the areas of need and how they're best addressed during COVID would be reasonable. And since we're not going to do the IEE discussion this time, but this has just come up, districts will oftentimes, when you ask for an IEE, they'll write you back and say, hey, how about um, can we have another person in the district do a second evaluation? And the answer to that is no, you don't get a second chance. The law wants to ensure that the district knows that the first evaluation is a strong evaluation and there's no provision for them to get a second opportunity to do it. I'm in the middle of an interesting um, compliance complaint, and I'm filing a lot of these days, and that's probably something we should talk about on the show too, because people can file their own compliance complaints. Um, I am filing complaints with the California Department of Education to get IEP meetings scheduled on time, to get observations and assessments done on time, and so on. So in a particular situation, I have a student who's 18, and he has 3 years worth of, let's say, transition evaluations. They're all terrible. They're all terrible. I asked the parent to send a letter that I wrote for her to the special education director. And I said that, I had parents say that we wanted an outside transition assessment. The director writes back and says, well, no, I'm not going to agree to that because the assessments that you referred to in the IEP weren't really assessments. They weren't complete, they weren't formal, they're informal. So A, I don't have to give you an IEE because we haven't fully assessed yet. And B, I don't have to file for due process and defend these evaluations because they aren't really evaluations. So that's pretty crazy. But I'm not ready to file for due process yet. So I have filed a compliance complaint with the California Department of Education. And in essence, what I said is, how come if these assessments were incomplete, they were used to develop a transition plan? And how come nobody ever said that these were what would the word be? They were temporary and incomplete in nature, and we're going to do a more thorough evaluation later. I mean, I was just like, wow, that's pretty brash to take that
Yeah.
position. But I actually think the reason she did it is because she forgot that the parents had an attorney. The letter came from the mom. She read it. She was like, "Oh, I'll try this." It's a, you know, it's something that she's done before. Um, so you gotta watch what they respond back with, and I think that would probably be a good show. Would be all the things the districts say to get out of doing IEEs.
I would actually love that because I think a lot of people, and by the way, Kayla is joining us for the first time and agreeing with you. And she says that IE has made a tremendous result for her family in particular. I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for that independent evaluation at the school's expense because it feels like you're going to get a no. But
Well,
are they allowed to say no?
yeah, they're allowed to say no, but if they say no, they have to file for due process and prove their evaluation was appropriate. And they don't really want to have to file for due process and add that to their administrative responsibilities. That's why the issue with the case that I was just talking about was interesting, because she said that we haven't evaluated yet. And since we haven't evaluated yet, I don't have to file for due process to defend my evaluation.
Craziness. And I just want to say for people who are afraid that the school will file due process against them, been there, done that twice. They filed due process against me. And I'm here to tell you that that is a pathway that is very viable for getting what you need. I
And
can't say a lot
also,
more than that.
if the heat gets too hot, you can always withdraw your IEE request, but why not try it and see if they'll pay for it?
Well, and I saw that when they filed due process against me, I thought it was the end of the world, and instead it was them getting me into a room where they could make a settlement that would be a closed settlement. And that there are worse things than that, let me just tell you. So,
So
you
let's,
know,
if we get burning questions, we love to answer those. And to the extent that we have time left over, we'll start talking about IEEs next week.
okay. We only have 2 minutes,
Yeah,
unfortunately, right now.
I've got another
So,
meeting, so I'm going to jump off 2 minutes early if that's okay with everybody.
yeah, but please just tell us about Tollner Law Offices again, and then we'll let you go.
Tyler Law Offices, we're on the web. Look us up. Let us hear from you. There's help for your problem.
Bonnie, we adore you. I'm so glad to be by your side in 2021. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes here, and I just want to take a second to talk about this week on Autism Live. We've got a big week here. Tomorrow, we're still continuing on with Temple Grandin Tuesdays, where it will be tomorrow. We're going to be showing the recorded interview with Temple that we did right before we went on the holiday break because we haven't shown it a second time. So Tuesdays is officially going to be Temple Grandin Tuesday. A lot of times we'll be showing you interviews that we've done with her in the past that you may not have seen, but about once a month we'll have her on live to answer your questions. She, in COVID, she's got a little bit more time and is a little bit more available to us to be here with us live. On Wednesday, Dr. Granpichet is back with us live. Dr. Doreen Granpichet will answer your questions. You can be sending those questions in right now, and we'll take those live on Wednesday morning. On Thursday, I'm really thrilled that we're kicking off this week with two of my favorite self-advocates. Jordan Kamnitzer and Tony Kent are going to be with us again. If you love on the spectrum, you will love them because they are in a long-term committed relationship and two incredible human beings. Jordan identifies himself as being on the spectrum, and Tony has Tourette's, and they're both in lovely people and have a lovely relationship. And they've been having a tough go of it in COVID in terms of employment and how that was work. They were working individuals before, and COVID has taken that away from them. And it's been a rough go. So they're going to be talking with us about the challenges that they're facing and how they're getting through it. And I'm excited to be with them on Thursday to hear from them. And then on Friday, we've got a wonderful advocate, Claudia, and I'm not going to remember her last name. I think it's Wendler. She has a consultant agency that she helps people to connect them to services. And we're very excited that she's going to be joining us on Friday during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I am so very grateful for all of you and for being back here with us in 2021. We've got some big stuff in store and we're going to keep on swimming. So I hope everybody has a great reset, renew, restart today. Take a breath. Remember what you have to be grateful for, and we will keep swimming. I will see you again live on Wednesday morning, but do turn in for, I think, one of my favorite interviews with Temple Grandin tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live this morning with Dr. Doreen. For a moment there, I was like, what happened? I'm normally on the other side. And then it just flipped. But we're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh for our favorite segment of the week, Ask Dr. Doreen. She's going to be answering your questions in just a couple of seconds, but I'm so happy to be here with her. In fact, I'm in a ridiculously unexplainable good mood, but we're taking it because there's a lot to be not happy about. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with you, Dr. Granpeesheh. I want to say briefly that Dr. Granpeesheh is the true expert, I think, in the field right now that can give us the best answers because she's been working in this field for over 30 years. In fact, I think it's much closer to the other decade, but I hate to tell on you because there's nothing about your skin that would tell anybody that. So I hate to give you away. But she's been working with individuals on the spectrum from very early ages up through senior citizens. And she also has an eye to helping the entire family to look at these individuals and see what they need to grow and reach their highest potential. So I adore her. She has been instrumental in our family's life and in my son's life. And I'm going to, brag on him and her later on in the show. But welcome, Dr. Granpeesheh. We're so glad you're here.
Good morning, Shannon. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much. All your kind words.
Well, it's such a delight.
It's a new year. We're going to keep on doing. Yeah.
It is. And our topic this week, we always have a topic every week. And our topic this week is restart, renew, this reset the button. And I have decided, because you know what Abraham Lincoln said, that most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And so I decided somewhere in the last, week that I was going to pretend that this is a spa vacation.
Oh, nice.
In which I'm working from time to time. I'm like, well, if I just look at it that way, it's a spa vacation. If somebody had said, would you like to take a year off? And during that year, you don't have to focus on grocery shopping. You'll do everything online and just take a year off and take care of yourself. I would be like, yippee. Yeah. So I'm pretending that it's a spa vacation and I'm thrilled with my spa vacation. So there we are. Now, but we know that many of you are not on a spa vacation, mentally or otherwise, and that you've got a lot of issues that you're dealing with. That's why Dr. Granpeesheh is here to help you to get to the good stuff. Believe me, been there, done. I was where you are, a lot of you, not entirely, but on my own journey with my family and my son. And we want to help you to get to the good stuff. So this show is meant to be interactive. We are live right now. This is Wednesday, the 13th of January. If you've been watching things on television, take a respite from them. Come and be here with us. And so you can be writing in your questions. Right now, we're live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Periscope. Just write your question in on those platforms. We're saying good morning to and Amanda. So glad that you are here. And if you want to shout out, please write in on whatever platform that you're watching right now. And if you want to watch us later on, because some of you are working or doing whatever, we're available on podcasts on all major podcasting sites as a free download. That's iTunes, Apple Music, Google Music, Deezer. We're on iHeartRadio, like Spotify, wherever it is, you'll find us there. And if you don't find us somewhere that you like to watch where you get free podcasts, please let us know, because Traven is he's like this amazing sleuth where he finds all the places to be. We're on Ghana, you guys. So find us in those places and tune in and listen to the show in podcast. You can still ask questions. In fact, if you have a question when we're not live, go to autism-live.com, click the chat button. A lot of the times our starter questions are taken directly from there. And Dr. Gramsci, I'm gonna jump right in here with one of our starter questions, if that's okay with you.
Of course, please go right ahead.
I would love to know how to handle a child who gets into a meltdown because we refuse to give him chips or anything that is not good for him. We are tired of giving in to him just to keep the peace. He is verbal and turning 25 soon.
Oh, that's so difficult. I wish he was turning 5, because it's of course a lot harder when our children get older and these habits have become ingrained, and now they're also much bigger, and can object. But what I always like to go back to is just trying to give a very brief explanation, and I hope it'll help other parents as well. Brief explanation of what happens when a child has a tantrum, or actually what happens whenever we give in, right? Whether it's a tantrum or yelling or hitting or any kind of challenging behavior and we give in. If you, for a moment, if you can just think of things from the child's perspective. I scream, I tantrum, I hit, I yell, and I get what I want. Anything, any behavior that is followed by a reward will increase. Any behavior that is followed by a reward will increase. That is the first basic premise of operant conditioning. If you want something to increase, reward it. And that is essentially what has been happening. So every time he has tantrumed, you've given in. By giving in, you are rewarding him, right? You're saying the tantrum works. You tantrum, I give you what you want. And so you need to stop doing that, and as soon as you possibly can. And honestly, I know it's a very scary thing when your child is 25. So you should probably have support and help before you do this, because I don't know how severe these tantrums are. The parents noted that this is a high functioning individual, so possibly not extremely severe, but I would still suggest that you have others there to help you, because when a 25-year-old, if you cut off the reinforcer, in other words, if you stop giving in to a 25-year-old, they might get very aggressive. I don't know, because at this point, the individual will be frustrated and they will be asking themselves, this worked for 25 years. How come it's not working anymore? And what happens is what we call an extinction burst. So the minute you stop attending to or giving in, the minute you cut off the reinforcer, the individual's behavior accelerates. It gets worse before it dies off. So there's this extinction burst. Extinction means you're no longer attending to that behavior. And so basically the individuals think about it from the person's point of view. They're thinking, this worked before. How come it's not working? Let me just yell louder. Let me scream a little bit harder. Let me hit. Let me do whatever it is so that they will give in again. And so it gets a little bit worse, and you have to stay with it. You have to continue not giving in, at which point gradually it starts to get less and less. And then the individual realizes that this isn't working for me anymore. And then they will find another behavior. And that's where it's more important for you to come in and actually model or prompt a new behavior. In other words, I will not give in to you when you scream and cry, but I will give in to you when you ask nicely. And that's the way it goes, is that you ignore or do not give in to challenging behaviors, but you heavily reward appropriate behaviors. And again, it's a lot easier when the child is younger. It's a lot harder when this pattern of behavior has gone on for a long time. And believe me, I know it is very, very difficult for parents. I myself had a very difficult time with this when my children were younger. At any time in life, it's hard. I mean, think about it. Sometimes our spouses might tantrum, and giving in is an easier way to deal with things, but in the long run, it's a very, very difficult thing.
Okay, we have an amazing opportunity right now because we have had one of our viewers who has identified previously as being on the autism spectrum, who's an adult, who's incredibly verbal and has written in with the flip side of this question. And they said, "Hi, Dr. Doreen. My question is about diets. My mother is trying to force me to change my eating habits, and I'm not happy about that. Yelling matches have occurred, etc. I know that it's good for my health, but my liver is, I think it's, I know that it's not good for my health, but my liver is diseased and has problems. How can I, as an autistic person, handle it perfectly?" So we've got both sides of this equation here. So now, talking to the person on the spectrum, what do you want to say to them?
That's wonderful and welcome. And it's nice to be able to communicate with someone who's on the spectrum. I always learn from individuals who are experiencing this. So I guess what I want to say is sometimes we feel that we don't want to do what's right because someone else is forcing us to do it. You being such a high functioning individual, I think you need to take control of this yourself. I think you need to understand, and maybe that's what you're saying here, how eating foods that are unhealthy will have a negative impact on your health over time. Now, one of the things that is for all of us, it's a lesson, is that often we do things that give us a reward short term, but in the long term are not good for us. Eating unhealthy foods is one of those things. So you're eating something, it feels really good right now, but over time it's damaging your liver or causing other issues for you. So this is the time to take control of it. First, I want you to be convinced about that yourself. If you truly believe that eating unhealthy stuff is something you want to get away from, if you agree with that, then do it in a way that works for you. It doesn't have to be all or none. It doesn't have to be an immediate cutoff of everything that you like. No. What you do is you list all the things that you like on a piece of paper, and then ask your mom or someone else to help you make a green mark on the ones that are healthy and a red mark on the ones that are unhealthy. And then every week, replace one of the red ones with a green one. Just take your time, do it over a period of months, and gradually give up those foods that are unhealthy. But make sure you replace them with something that you also like. Now, sometimes in the beginning, when it has to do with food, we don't really like the healthy foods. A lot of people will say, I prefer to have cake instead of fruit, let's say. But if you stay with it for a little while, you'll realize that if you give up cake for a little while, like let's say a month, then when you come back and you have cake, you'll feel pretty groggy. You won't feel very good because now your body is healthy and it doesn't want that junk anymore. When you're in the middle of it, your body is craving all this junk, right? And always remind yourself, and also, by the way, if you have a day when you've done really, really well and most of your foods are green foods, the ones that are healthy, then reward yourself in some other way. Find a reward that has nothing to do with food. Find an activity that has nothing to do with food. Try to keep yourself feeling rewarded by doing those other things. Sometimes when we eat unhealthy foods, it's because we are looking for a reinforcer. We're looking for a reward. We haven't found it in anything else. So I think that's my advice for this person.
I love that. And I just want to send everybody a hug because I think whether you're on a spectrum or not on the spectrum, one of the things I've learned from you, Dr. Grampiche, is that food is a primary reinforcer,
Yep.
that we link it to other things. And I am a living example of that. And, if you've been watching, we've been doing this show now we'll be starting our 10th year in the fall of doing this show. And you probably have watched my weight go up and down a few times. And so food is an issue for me. And I want to send everybody a hug. It's really hard
Very
uh,
hard.
to get into a place where you're eating healthily and staying eating healthily. On my spa vacation this year, I'm very proud of the fact that I've lost over 30 pounds.
Wow.
Um,
Amazing.
but I still have a long way to go because there was a long period of time when, food became my reward for everything. Just being honest, because, I like to keep it honest here. But I will tell you that this morning, I was thinking about the fact that I'm a big nighttime eater, or I was, and that for 6 months, I haven't been eating after 7 o'clock at night. And now I can't even imagine how gross I would feel if I did.
Wow.
Um, and so I think, as Dr. Grampiche was saying, it takes time because the reinforcer is so far removed
Yeah.
from being healthy, especially if your weight is okay and it's just for your liver's sake, because you can't look at your liver every day and go, gosh, I see that improvement and it's worthwhile.
That's right.
So I encourage you to play this back and listen to Dr. Grampiche's advice. There are also all kinds of programs out there now that, depending on how you like to mask it, Weight Watchers does a thing where you have points and you keep track of the foods by points. Noom has a whole thing that's very similar to what Dr. Grampiche was using, and it's ABA. All Noom is ABA. I don't know if everybody realizes that. And they try to give you reinforcers as you go along. All of those things cost, but most of your health providers, if you go to your insurance, they'll give you a free app to do what Weight Watchers and Noom do in a slightly different way, and a way to track your progress. And they'll reward you with points and things like that to buy stuff from their store because it makes sense for them. We all want to be healthier. So I sort of love that we got to hear the two sides of it, though, from the parent point of view of arguing with your child, and then adult child, and then what to do for an adult. So I kind of love that. But we have a desperate mom who has written in. And she says, I have a question for Dr. Grampiche. My son is 4.8 years old and has been having 30 hours of ABA therapy for 9 months now. He is speaking small sentences, but he gets random bouts of laughter, which are very difficult to control. We are treating yeast as well. Please help me, desperate mom. And she
Yeah.
says, should I ignore it or respond when he's doing the laughter?
Yeah. So that's, and I appreciate that you wrote that you are treating yeast as well, because that's where I would go first. A lot of times when you see kind of this random laughter, almost as if the individual is drunk, it ends up being yeast. So I'm glad that you're treating it. Please keep in touch, frequent contact with your physician, because sometimes one antifungal medication has no effect on the child and another does. I know a lot of people who do really well on nystatin, and then some people who say nystatin did nothing for my child and I had to go on diflucan. You got to talk to your physician and make sure it's the yeast levels are being reduced. That being said, in the meantime, you ignore it. You do not, as a behaviorist, if you start to talk about it or respond or address it in any way, there's a likelihood that it will go up. It's important that you don't allow the bouts of laughter to delay the treatment, the ABA, and make sure all of your staff know that, or people who are working with him, or as you. Sometimes our kids realize that if I do something silly, it buys me more time. And so just if you have to kind of keep the speed up by maneuvering him through whatever it is you asked, do that, but don't address the laughter itself.
And I would love to know what you're doing to treat the yeast. If you are doing, drug treatment or if you're just trying to do it dietarily, I can tell you that we battled with yeast for many years, and we would get it semi under control, and then, you know, we would lose our grip on it. So there were several times that we had to cycle back. And it became clear to me that in our case, and all cases are different, right? Because each one of our kiddos is their own ecosystem. But it became clear to me that for us, for a period of time, we had to not, sugar had to be gone completely from his diet, as well as artificial colors and flavors. But we had to limit the amount of fruit intake that he had as well, and the amount of carb intake. That did not mean that we put him totally on a, you know, crazy keto, like no carbs, but you know, it was a lot of work for a couple of years, but we saw that it would make a huge difference. That he would be able to focus when we had the yeast under control. So um, we just look away. She says he says to himself, "Stop laughing," but then he continues. They are doing diet, also nystatin.
Okay, so a couple of things on that feedback. As I said, just make sure the nystatin is working for him. Nystatin is extremely light antifungal medication. You can give nystatin to 1-month-old babies. In fact, we do when they have thrush. But so what I want to suggest is two things. One is, so make sure you talk to your physician, first of all, about the medication and make sure it's working. But more importantly, if he's saying to himself, stop laughing, that means someone has said that to him, which is not what I recommend you do. As I said, do not address the laughing. Nobody should actually say to him, stop laughing. And also, you should not look away, because by looking away, he is getting a delay in the treatment or the program. So please don't do that either. Keep working through whatever it is, as it pretends the laughter never happened. Just pretend like it's not happening at all. Keep moving on, move forward. If he laughs instead of answering a question that you're asking him, then go about your life and come back and answer the question, ask the question again. If he laughs instead of doing something that you just asked him to do, physically maneuver him to actually do the thing you asked him to do. Act like the laughter is not happening.
Okay. Stephanie would like to know, how can adults who are diagnosed with autism as adults learn social skills? Also, are there resources available for those who are diagnosed as adults? In my research, it seems like if you were diagnosed as an adult, your diagnosis is less legitimate. That breaks my heart.
Yeah, it does. I understand it, and it is true. I would say you're right, and I'll tell you why people don't take it as seriously. There's, I think, two reasons. First of all, one is that if you are diagnosed as an adult, by definition, that means that you don't have a very severe case. Because if you did, someone would have noticed it earlier in childhood, right? So in that sense, you know, there is a big difference when this is a huge spectrum, and you have on the highest functioning level, you have an adult who has social issues and therefore does fall on the spectrum. But on this side of the other end of the spectrum, you have, let's say, a child who cannot even communicate his or her needs. And so that's the more severe portion of the spectrum. And our hope, of course, is that all the folks on, excuse me, on the more severe side will gradually, with the help of all interventions, especially ABA, move towards the lighter side of the spectrum, right? And that's what we hope to accomplish. For you as an adult, I understand how it feels, because you're still struggling with certain things and you want people to take notice of that and understand that. The other unfortunate thing is that there are people right now, believe it or not, who pretend to have these issues. I've actually had a couple of people try to get a diagnosis from me, and I would not give them the diagnosis simply because they had other issues going on, not autism, but for instance, they had social anxiety. And that in itself is a very important disorder and problem to get a hold of and handle, but it isn't ASD. So now going back to your original question, which is how do you get help for it? It's just like anything else. I want you to look at it like anything else. Let's say someone as an adult has a problem understanding, I don't know, math or balancing their checkbook or driving or whatever it is. You specifically focus and try to do work on that particular area. Now, I will tell you that we have, and Shannon, you often say this, we have listed all the different ways that we work with social skills in our skills curriculum. And I really want to recommend to you that you look at our skills program, our skills curriculum. It's online. So www.skillsforautism.com. In fact, feel free to even call the skills company and tell them your situation. There is a particular version of skills that we built years ago. I don't know if it's out there right now, but it was actually only the advanced programs. So they included social skills, cognitive skills, executive functioning skills. And those are probably the areas of our lessons, of our curriculum that you want to take a look at. Just go through them, just go through the questionnaires or go through those lessons and see if any of them pertain to you. Whenever I look through skills, there's like, especially in the executive functioning section, I'm like, oh, that's a good plan. I got to do that myself. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's helpful. If you don't find things that are helpful, then you need to go to the adult version of skills, which also has a social section. But I'm pretty certain you'll be able to find some things that are useful to you. And those are lessons. And those are just, it's like, you know, practice this activity. First, rehearse it on your own, and then find someone who is going to engage with you, and then you can practice it with them and those types of things. The other thing I want to say is that, like everything else, social skills increase when we find a group of individuals who have similar interests. So I don't know what you're interested in, but if you do have something that you like, I don't care what it is, could be cooking, it could be robotics, it really doesn't matter. Something that you are interested in, these days you can go online and you can find others who have the same interest. And that is, and make sure you engage with them, get involved with their activities, with clubs, with memberships, online activities. And that is the easiest way to get social skills going.
There you go. Since you brought up skills, it's time for my weekly reminder about what Skills is offering for free right now for our audience. Want to remind you, I'm going to give you the phone number now, and then I'm going to give it at the end. So if you have pen and paper ready right now, the phone number is 877-975-4559. Skills, every week they have something during the pandemic that they're offering to our community here watching the show for free. So this week for ABA parents and guardians, they say they will continue to offer our free IBT parent e-learning course, Parent Getting Started. For the educator community, we will continue to offer our IBT educator e-learning module, Educator Getting Started, available at no charge. All of these are. And then they will continue to offer their RBT, which is Registered Behavior Technician 2.0 training course, free for the parent audience on a case-by-case basis. In addition, we will continue to offer the 10% discount on all skills products for anyone that says that they have come from watching Autism Live when they call the office. Again, the phone number is 877-975-4559. I want to encourage you to call that and say that you saw it on Autism Live and that you want the friends and family discount, Shannon's friends and family discount. My family is large. My tribe is large and beautiful. And I hope that you will check that out. I think that sometimes, as Dr. Grampiche was saying, just reading the lesson. I remember being an adult and for the first time reading the lesson on ending a conversation, and I went, oh my gosh, this is what's been wrong my entire life. I just didn't know this one little piece. And I'm still working on it. I'm not great at it, but it's helped me tremendously just reading the lesson. So I do want to point out that there is skills and then there is skills living. And skills is, if anybody is under the age, it's somewhere between 12 and 14, they encourage people to transition over to skills living. But as Dr. Grampiche said, there is another part of skills where they just pull out those three levels, the cognition, the executive function, and the social skills. So talk with them about that. Tell them what it is that you're looking for and have that conversation with them. I'm sure that they will be happy to steer you in the right direction. And feel free to ask them what's available to me for free today. There's no harm in asking, right? That's always a good thing. I also want to acknowledge that Parker said in the community also self-diagnosis is not legitimate. And I want to speak briefly to what you were saying, Dr. Grampiche, that part of the problem right now is that in our quest for awareness of what autism is, many people looked at that and went, oh, I think that's me. And some very notable people have said that, and they've taken a lot of grief for it in public. I remember when Jerry Seinfeld said, I think I'm a little bit on the spectrum, and the world screamed at him for having said that. And he said, I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but it is now, as much as I love that Amy Schumer was so fabulous and her husband is so fabulous and that they allowed us to see what it was like as he was getting a diagnosis, but there have been many people who are like, ooh, I've had every girlfriend I know call me and say, I think that's my husband. You know, and while I don't mean to laugh, there's a big difference between having an autism spectrum disorder and not noticing when your wife does something. There's a big difference. So, not saying that people shouldn't attempt to get the diagnosis, but there is rampant right now for many good reasons why people are saying that they have a diagnosis, which then waters it down for the people who do. And that's the difficult part.
Yeah.
But in any case, okay, I want to get to this question. My son is finally starting ABA services again in home since COVID began. He is 12. It's 5 days a week, 2 hours per day. He's doing a focused program. He is starting vision therapy next week. Vision therapy wants to work on fixation and convergence. Do you know if there are any programs/goals I can ask his BCBA for to aid with those vision therapy goals?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so of course there are, and in fact, if you look in our skills curriculum, again, in the motor section, and you will be looking at skills developing, which is that what it's called these days? The
Skills
younger
living.
skills.
No, I think isn't it just called skills regular?
Well, skills for the younger population, even though he's 12, you should look at the skills for childhood. That one has a section called motor, and in the motor section, there's a section called visual motor. And in there, you will find activities for convergence. We call it bipolarity. But there's a lot of stuff in there that will be very useful to you. Now, having said that, he's only receiving a total of 10 hours a week of ABA. If they are working, if the vision therapists are going to be working on fixation and convergence, great. You should have your ABA team working on other stuff, because I'm sure there are other things that he needs as well. And you might ask yourself, what are those other things? So the way that skills works is you start with an assessment. You start with a questionnaire. We call it the skills index. Online, you will be asked lots and lots and lots of questions. And those questions help identify all the areas that he is below his own age. So I think that's something that parents find very interesting as well. I remember when my kids were just born, I loved those books, What to Expect in the First Year, What to Expect, all that. And those books, the section that I really liked, Shannon, was like they had a little chart that would just say, these are kind of the milestones that you want to make sure are met at this age. And I would always go there and I'd be like, okay, well, she met this or he met this, and it was very broad, but nevertheless, it helps me identify if we're falling behind somehow. So I think for parents, it's kind of a fun exercise anyway to just go in there and answer those questions. I know it's time consuming and you can actually select by domain. You don't have to answer all the questions. You could just look at language questions or social or play or whatever it is. Because what ends up happening is you end up seeing all the different areas that you still need to work on. And and those are kind of fun. Or you can also see where sometimes our kids are just super advanced in one area or another. So I think it's really good to do that. That'll help you identify things that your child needs to work on. And then you should have your ABA team working on those so that you have a little bit of a broader program.
Yeah. And I want to check. I don't know if it's this mom. I know there have been a couple of times that I've sent. There's something called an iPort, that is a way that you can be, because a lot of times when you're doing visual therapy, they'll ask you to come to the office, and that's really hard in COVID. And sometimes you just live far away. When we were doing visual therapy, we couldn't get to the office, and so we had the choice of purchasing something called an iPort. They stopped making them for about 5 years. They're making them again, and they're a little bit less expensive than they were before. So if you're looking for visual therapy, it does like 100 different exercises, and it's kind of cool. It looks like a Star Wars thing, and you put on these glasses that look like they're 3D glasses, and then you have to flip them around and do them the other way. It was tough to get my son to do them until we had a reward system for it. But once we had a reward system, he was happy to do it, and it really, really helped him good. I did send the iPort to you before. Wonderful. But we also use the lessons in skills as well. So, but I love that you suggested doing the visual therapy when you're doing the visual therapy and working on all the other stuff with your therapist, because 10 hours is just, yeah, it's not that much.
Yeah.
So
But I also want to say, Shannon, that the vast majority of like games, online gaming, and so on, still also work on visual skills. What you need to do is, yeah, like convergence, for instance, being able to focus both eyes on one stimulus. Once you get into visual therapy or even look on skills and they give you a bunch of activities, you'll see the type of thing you're doing, like the type of exercise that is done for that. And then you can go to games, just like online games, like PS or Xbox or whatever, and see what types of things produce the same result. Like there are games that are also going to be working on things like conversions, tracking, bipolarity, etc. And so that's another way to get your child to improve with visual skills.
I would be willing to bet, especially all that, what do you call it, the VR stuff. It's a very interesting thing. Okay. We also had somebody write in about their child who was diagnosed last year at 6, and they said, I need help. Maybe a list of things to do to help her and help myself. I'm at my wit's end. When she has her meltdowns, she hits, she screams, throws things. I don't know what I should do.
Got it. Okay, so we're just going to give a kind of around, like an overall series of things that you should look into. And the first one obviously is ABA. You need to get in touch with an ABA company wherever you are and get a program going immediately. For us at CARD, 6 is right around the time when we can still get comprehensive programs from payers being your insurance company. And it is very hard to get 40-hour programs approved once the child is older. It's not an exact cutoff. Every insurance company has their own stuff, but I really do recommend that you try to get your funding going. So you contact your health insurance and you say, I would like an ABA program, and they'll tell you what's required. Sometimes some of the payers will require you to get a diagnosis from your physician, or a recommendation or referral, or prescription from your physician saying your child needs ABA. Once you get that, you then get connected to an ABA organization. Now get going on this fast, because it takes a little while to get started. As I said, you have to do these types of assessments, like ours at CARD is skills. And you will do that assessment so we can identify like what kinds of strengths your child has and what kinds of areas they need help in. Then the ABA organization will get a program going. In the meantime, once you've gotten that started, you can also get together with a physician. Sometimes, depending on if your child has dietary issues, gastrointestinal issues, sleep issues, those are types of things that you want to make sure you deal with early on, because if your child's not sleeping, if your child has a lot of bloating, is uncomfortable, has constipation, all these types of things, you'd be surprised what a significant effect all of that has on your child's ability to learn. So make sure you're dealing with all of that kind of stuff. If you want help figuring out where to find a physician, online, there's an organization called MedMaps, and they have listed physicians all over the country who are kind of trained in a more holistic type of intervention. Many of those folks are kind of naturopaths or homeopaths, but then there's also just Western medicine physicians on there, but they are all looking to boost your child's immune system. They're all working to try to reduce toxins from your child's life. And by that means making your child healthier so that he or she can learn faster. So I think the two main things are make sure your child's biology is sort of stabilized, so the child's healthy and able to learn very fast. And then you look at ABA. Now, if your child has a lot of gastrointestinal inflammation, your physician will tell you that, and then you'll need to also get involved with a dietitian or nutritionist who can help you select the right foods. On the other side, if your child has problems picking up speech, you might need speech therapy as well. And finally, if your child has issues with either gross or fine motor skills or proprioceptive skills, like you might need a little bit of occupational therapy. That's the full array. So we're talking, generally speaking, a lot of people have a very intensive ABA program. They have a physician who can monitor the child. They might have a dietitian or nutritionist, and they might also have speech or occupational therapy. And that's pretty much it, I think, right, Shannon?
Yeah, can we talk for just a second about the hours? Because not only is this, it's come up with this parent's question, but also the parent that was asking about the 12-year-old getting 2 hours a day. She wrote back and she said, he's 12. I thought that at this age, 2 hours a day was a good amount. He's also homeschooled for 2 hours a day. And I think, there's nobody better than you to talk about what can be accomplished in what amount of time.
Yeah. So, I'll go back and say that this will show how old I am. In 1984, we published a paper at UCLA, which was the original paper that changed the world of ABA. And that's really important because that paper was the reason, it's the seminal study still to this day in the field of behavioral medicine. And it has to do with what we did is we were, for many years, from like the late 70s to the early 80s, we were kind of working with patients, with individuals who had the diagnosis of autism. And let me tell you, it was pretty severe in some cases because this was before deinstitutionalization. And so we were working with children who had been placed in Camarillo State Hospital, and that was very severe. So what we did was we had a group of children who were able to come to UCLA, right? So they were close enough where we used our students at UCLA and we trained them to do therapy, just like right now ABA organizations train their behavior technicians. And so these students would work with the children. And if you were really close to UCLA, you'd get a lot of hours because these therapists, these students would come to your house. You could also come to UCLA and you'd get tons of therapy. If you were living pretty far from UCLA, you'd get less therapy because we didn't have students who would be able to drive all the way down to, let's say, hours away from UCLA. So naturally, this ended up producing for us two groups of children. And we made sure that the groups are equal in their IQ and their language ability and all of that. And so the children who were closer to UCLA were getting about 40 hours per week of ABA from us. And those who were further out were getting about 10 hours per week of ABA, like the individual who had written in earlier. And these children were all they had all entered the program around the age of 3.5, and they were all aged between 3.5 and 6. Okay. And then there was a third group of children that we also measured who were kids who were same age, same functioning level, but they were on the other side of UCLA was an area called Neuropsychiatric Institute. Now it's called SEML. And they used to do other types of interventions. And those kids were getting 10 hours of other types of interventions. So what we did is after about 2.5 years, we looked back, and of the group who had received 40 hours per week for 2.5 years, half of those children had attained normal IQ, and they were now in first grade, and they were functioning extremely well alone without an aide in first grade. So for all practical purposes, and as independent psychiatrists removed their diagnosis of autism, half of those kids. So actually, to be accurate, 47%. Of the other two groups who had received 10 hours, only one child made it, and that was 2%. So it was 47% of the ones who received intensive therapy, 2% of the ones who received 10 hours. So that's where it becomes very obvious. That was the first study that pointed to hours, intensity being the key point in ABA. We call it now dosage, right? So if I recommend for your child, let's say 20 milligrams of a medication, but you only give them 2 milligrams, what kind of result are you going to get? Just think of it that way. Are you going to get the result that is expected from that medication? Same thing with ABA. If I recommend 10 hours, 15, 20, 30 hours, and you only give them 2 hours, it's just not going to work. And the more needs the child has, the higher the intensity should be. Now, the problem is funding for intensive therapy cuts out around the age 6 to 8. A lot of the payers don't really want to fund a child who's, let's say, starting at age 8 for 40 hours. Why? Because from their perspective, it's virtually impossible to teach all the things that you need to teach to an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old. And it's probably pretty close to being accurate, to be honest with you. But it's a different thing when you're working with a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, because you still have enough time to teach all the things you need to change behavior. But that being said, I think another parent had written in that they're doing what's called a focused program. Focused programs can go on forever, even in adulthood, and they are very, very effective. What a focused program is that we're not working on every area. We're working on a focus. We have on a particular area like social skills or language or vocational or severe challenging behaviors. Whatever it is, we're focusing on just that one thing. So I don't know if that's what you meant me to go through, Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, I always appreciate that, but I also think too, that you talked about this a couple of weeks ago in a way that I think lit up a lot of people's brains, and they were like, "Oh, okay, I got it." That somebody was saying, "Well, I need for what I want my child to do. We need to work on toilet training, and we're having tantrums, and we need to build speech, and we're doing 12 hours a week." And you were saying, "I don't have enough hours to get all that done. We're going to have
Yeah,
to pick two of those things, and we're not, and it's going to take us 6 months to do this as opposed to two." And people were like, "What?"
yeah,
And everybody went, like, it takes a certain number of hours to toilet train. It takes a certain number of hours weekly to work on speech. And you kind of went through this thing and said, if I have 40 hours, I can work on it all. If I have
yeah,
30 hours, I can work on these things. If I have
right.
20 hours, I just like for people to think of it that way. That if I only have 10 hours, I can only accomplish a certain amount. And that might be okay.
And that amount has a lot to do with the child's functioning level as well, which is why it's really hard for us to write a prescription and say every child needs X amount. Because if your child is learning extremely fast, then and I have 40 hours, I might only need that. I mean, I have literally, let's be honest, I have recovered children in 18 months because the child was just a really rapid learner, and we figured out what the child needed in order to be fully attentive and aware and so on and learn fast. Okay. On the other hand, I've also recovered individuals, but it took 10 years. So, it just has to do with how fast the individual is learning and how many things they still need to master. It's really that simple. So you start with the assessments that I mentioned, and you see all the areas that you need to work on. And each of those areas will take some time, and that has to do with your child's ability. And, so when I have a 40-hour program, I could probably focus on about average of about 20 lessons at any given time. But if I have a 10-hour program, I'm probably going to only focus on about 7 or 8 lessons. So that's the issue. And you need to be that your BCBA, your board certified behavior analyst, should be able to help you with that.
Okay. I want to get to a question, and it's coming from Canada. And I also want to mention to you, Dr. Grampiche, that during the break, we had many people write in from Canada and ask if you would be willing to go and talk to the Prime Minister in Canada because the state of ABA in Canada is dire.
Yeah.
And there are many things that we love about Canada, and Canada seems to have figured out, but ABA does not appear to be one of them. So if we can get you over there to talk to the very handsome Prime Minister, I would be very happy if we could make that happen. And a
So
lot of
yeah,
other.
I mean, let me just address that as well. In fact, I do go to Canada pretty frequently because my husband is Canadian. So I go to the Toronto area pretty frequently. In fact, I've even been there during COVID. I'm going back there in March. So I would be delighted to talk to whoever to help get ABA in Canada. I also know, like, I've also given a lot of speeches in Canada for different organizations, and I pretty much know Autism Canada and all the different organizations that provide ABA or talk about ABA. So I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I agree with you. The medical situation in Canada with health insurance doesn't really help. There is some funding, but the wait lists for it are so long in Canada that you basically your child misses the window of opportunity. So yeah, please, anytime anybody wants to get me connected with the powers that may be, whether it's the Prime Minister or whoever else, I'm happy to help.
Okay. They've written in and said, and they would like for you to meet their son. They've got a 4-year-old with severe and receptive speech delay,
Yeah,
struggling to follow directions and putting objects. They say on mouth, but I wonder if that is in mouth because I think that's slightly different. And how to help. Thank you.
yeah.
And they are in Toronto. So the next time you go, I think they would like to meet up with you. But can you tell us, since you're right there, do you mean on mouth or in mouth? Because that, to me, that's vastly different. Do you disagree, Dr. Grampiche?
No, it is very different.
So if you could just clarify that for us, but any help,
Yeah,
obviously,
I
we
mean,
prefer that they start ABA.
yeah, absolutely. And I'd be happy to see your child. I don't know if I'm going to Toronto this trip. I go to Cambridge, just so you know. You probably know where that is, being a Canadian from Ontario. And I'd be happy to see your child. And see, yeah, so they're writing in mouth also bites on wrists. Yeah, I have to follow up with some folks that I know in the Toronto area who were developing schools and it's on my list to do. See what they've managed to accomplish. I don't know if anybody's managed to do much in the past year, but I definitely will follow up with them.
Okay. But in the meantime, for her, what do you have any advice for a child who is putting things in mouth, because that gets very scary,
Yeah,
biting the wrists?
yeah, for sure. So, first of all, let me just say there are behavior analysts in that area, especially in Toronto. And I wonder if we can do everything we can to try to connect you to some of them. Because this type of behavior, what you have to do is first you have to first of all, you have to, with any behavior, you have to identify the function first. So, and that means what is causing this? Why is the child doing this? And here you've listed two different behaviors: biting on wrists and putting objects in mouth. Now, putting objects in mouth, if they're things that are not usually not food, and depending on whether or not the child swallows them, this would be referred to as pica. And yes, it can be very dangerous. But for either one of those behaviors, you start with figuring out when it happens, under what circumstances it happens, what type of stimulus, let's say, they put in the mouth, do they swallow it? And last but not least, what do I do? What usually do people do when this behavior happens? So it's like antecedents, define the behavior, and what are the consequences? And all of this stuff exists on skills in a section called CIFA, which stands for Card Indirect Functional Assessment. And that is, they ask you a lot of questions there online about the behavior. And then depending on your answers, it will connect you to a section called BIP Builder, which means Behavior Intervention Plan Builder. And that will tell you exactly what to do for that specific behavior based on the function. So I can't tell you what to do today because I don't know the function of these behaviors. It's possible that the child needs vitamins or zinc, and that a lot of kids do that when they have pica, but it is also a behavior. It is also a behavior that has become a habit. So we need to deal with it in a functional way. So please, the first thing you can do is go online, get on the skills website, answer the CIFA, and get the BIP, get the behavior intervention plan, and then try to get people who are trained in ABA to implement that plan. I'd say probably, I want to say 70% of my kids who put objects in their mouth, it has nothing to do with vitamins at all or deficiency, at least 70% of them. So, and also biting on wrists. Very frequently, something like biting on wrist ends up being a frustration thing that the child does that freaks out the parent, and the parent backs off. And so it becomes an effective way of getting the parent to back off. On the other hand, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. We need to find out the function and then treat the behavior according to the function. So I can't give you feedback until I know exactly why it's happening.
Yeah, and just I want to point out the other part of it too that we always miss as parents is that it is happening for a reason.
Yeah.
And so when Dr. Granpeesheh is talking about finding out what the reason is, and then we have to make sure that whatever need it is that was being met by the biting, they can get met in another way. That's the part parents always leave out.
Yes.
Is that it's a vital need that's being met by them doing this, and we're not just trying to take that away, we're trying to find something that's functional to replace it with. So if he's biting, a wrist because he wants to get out of something, we want to teach him the way to say, I need a break. I'd like to wait. I'm nervous, whatever it is that he needs to convey. It
Yeah,
isn't just take it away, because a lot of times parents just miss that part of it.
that's right.
Uh,
And I see the parent wrote saying that yes, I think he is frustrated because he's not verbal. If that's the case, you need to get him on a picture exchange communication system like PEX, so that his frustration goes down because he can now communicate. Communication is super important for our kids.
Okay. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Just as somebody wrote in and said their child is obsessed with animals, and how do you deal with obsessions? And I would love to talk about that for an hour, because that seems like a really great thing to be obsessed about.
I,
And I want to remind everybody that the line between obsession and passion for something that will be a lifelong thing is very slim. And that if we can direct things, like we have kids who are obsessed with slamming doors. Now, I'm not saying that there's no job that you could get that where that would be involved, but it's harder. But having an obsession with animals, like, man, my head goes right to career, career, career.
Absolutely.
Um,
And we can talk more about obsessions and passions next show, Shannon,
That
as
would
well.
be great. That would be great. We did have somebody write in about looking for a job and help with looking for a job in the Valley. I just want to point out that tomorrow on the show, we have self-advocate Jordan Kamnitzer and his girlfriend, Tony Kent. They are both self-advocates, and they have been dealing with the employment piece. Jordan has been in a job for over 30 years, but is unemployed in COVID. And we're going to be talking about precisely that topic with him and Tony tomorrow. So you'll want to tune in for that. Dr. Granpeesheh, I know you got to go, but we just adore you. It's so lovely to have you
So
back
much.
here in this
Good
new
to
year.
see everyone.
Thank you so much. Everybody else, we'll see you back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from Southern California this morning, and we're so excited to be here with you. Today is January 14th, 2021, if you're watching this recorded. We are going to be with you live for the next hour, and we're very excited to be here. And I'm really excited about the guests that we have on. I will tell you that they are two of the sweetest, nicest, kindest people that I am aware of on the planet. And they always brighten my day when I have an opportunity to talk to them. And I know that they've been going through some challenges recently. So I think that this is going to be a really informative thing for all of us to realize. I don't know about you, but I'm in this mode, in this renew. We're going to talk in a second about renew, refresh, restart. It's really, I think there's a lot of people out there having a lot of challenges, right? And it's very hard to be in a place where you're feeling two emotions at the same time, right? And this is why I tell you that, like, you are entitled to all of the feelings that you're feeling, but you don't want to get stuck in that and get mired in that, right? You want to get into a place where you recognize and are grateful for the things that you're grateful for. And our guests today are going to be Jordan Kamnitzer and Tony Kent. And one of the things that they do for me whenever I have a conversation is that they remind me through their actions about how grateful they are for all the things. And do we need to stop, Traven? I'm hearing that we're not live on YouTube, that we're only live on Facebook. Do we need to restart? Tell me what we need to do. I'm going to keep talking about Jordan and Tony until you tell me what to do. But they remind me, because just the way they view the world and how grateful they are and how in love. Oh, now we're live on Facebook. Okay. Or now we're live on YouTube. In any case, Restream is the service that we currently use, and sometimes it has issues. And we are having a couple of technical issues this morning. So just making you aware, there's always other things going on. Right? Just making you aware we are having some technical things, but the fabulous Traven is on the job and taking care of things. So if you're just seeing us now live on YouTube, it was because we were having a little bit of problem with that. And your comments that you write in on Facebook are going to take a little bit longer too, but that doesn't mean that we won't get them. We're just having to reroute because the fabulous Traven knows what he's doing. So in any case, we're going to talk more about Jordan and Tony later on, but I think they're just lovely, and I'm thrilled that they're going to be with us today. I think it's a great way to start out the year by checking in with them, hearing what they've got going on, and and maybe being of support to them, and them being of support to all of us by sharing their hope and the generosity of their spirit, really is what it's all about. So we are going to be live, though, this entire hour, and it's really important to us that you be able to interact with us, because we view this as a conversation. This is a very interactive show. We like it to be interactive. We're happiest when it's interactive. So let me point out that even though we were struggling a little bit, you can converse with us right now. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Periscope. And all 4 of those platforms have ways that you can chat with us, and we encourage you to do that right now. And because we like to say hi to you, we like to know where you're watching, we like to know what you have going on. So we also encourage you that if you can't watch the show live, we love that. That's the bigger part of our audience that isn't able to watch live. But we want to remind you that there are lots of places that you can do that. And you can go back through our library of videos. You can start by going to autism-live.com and searching through the different channels, or by putting in a topic and seeing all the videos that are on that topic. We invite you to be able to do that. It's all free, by the way. It's been really important to us. We are now coming up on our 10th anniversary of doing this show, and I'm really proud of that. And along the way, we've changed a lot of things and tried a lot of things, right? And frequently somebody will come in who wants to consult with us and says, I think we can make this bigger and better. And we know that it can be bigger and better, right? So we're open always to hearing that. But I always find that there's a point when they say, well, we think you should charge a subscription to your viewers. And then I go, okay, no, we're done here. At least you're done with me. Like, if you want to do that, get another host, do that. But and I love that our main underwriter, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, is in agreement with us about that. I'm really proud that they have worked so hard to keep us on the air and not charge anyone anything, because they believe in getting free information to people around the world. That's the least that we can all do, right? So we're free in all those places. Good morning to Nasser. Good morning to Tomoko. I hope I said that right. But good morning to both of you. So we hope that you will write in on those platforms, talk with us, and that you will watch us in podcast. Our homepage, autism-live.com, searchable, but also our YouTube page is searchable with all of our videos. You can get our podcast on iTunes. We're everywhere. Ghana, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever there are podcasts, you will find us. And we are free in all of those places. Really thrilled and excited to be that for you. I do like to remind you at the start of the show that we have lots of experts that are here on the show, and that's our pleasure to be able to provide that for you. But please do not confuse me with the experts. I'm not an autism expert. I'm not even pretending to be one. I heard somebody say last night in one of the many interviews about things going on in the world, someone said, well, I'm not a doctor, but although I do play one on late night TV, and obviously they don't, but I'm not an autism expert, nor do I play one on late night TV. I am a mom, a very proud mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He is now 17 and a half. He's getting ready to graduate from high school, and we have already a college acceptance letter. I'm announcing that for the first time here. Very proud of that boy. So that's my deal. My son was diagnosed, and we basically were told to, get rid of expectations. And I just don't believe in that. And we worked really hard, and we got very lucky. And I think that it's a combo platter of the two of those. And please don't ever think for a second that that we don't acknowledge that. But I want to help you to be as lucky as possible. I want to help you to know what direction is right for you to work in, because it's different for everyone. And when I say you, we're talking here, this show is meant, our whole mission is to provide information and inspiration for the larger autism community. So when I say say that, what I mean is that we start with saying that our community starts, the beating heart of our community is individuals who are on the autism spectrum. We love, admire, respect those individuals and try to elevate a voice here for them, a platform for them to be able to speak and tell those of us who are not on the spectrum the things that we need to know. But in our community, not only do we focus on that beating heart, but everyone who loves and cares about those individuals and cares about them getting the rights to be able to live, love, work, and play where they see is important to them. So that's really what we're about here. All right, we like to start every Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. And this is where we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are those experts talking about, and why does this have anything to do with us, and why should we bother to learn something new? Because we're busy, right? So let's take a look at what our jargon for today is. I've got a lot of windows open all over the place. And poor Traven is struggling to be able, do we have our jargon? There we do. Okay. Antecedent, because we're sort of starting over at the beginning this year. So antecedent. Now, I don't know about you, but this was one of the very first ABA terms that was introduced to me. And I remember thinking, oh man, is this what this is going to be like? They're like, let's talk about ABA. ABA is applied behavior analysis. And, now we're going to talk about antecedents. And I was like, just somebody, drown me right now. Because I thought, oh, I'm not going to make it. But I just try to remember and what this means. So let's take a look at what our actual definition of antecedent is. Then we'll look at our working definition after we've made fun of the actual definition. And then we'll explain exactly what you need to know. So an antecedent is anything that occurs or is present immediately before the behavior of interest, which is like a really redonkulous way of saying what it really is. So let's not even waste time. Let's go right to our working definition is what happened before. And if there's one thing that I could put in everybody's pocket at the beginning of this new year to think on, it's that whenever something is going on that is not working for you, it could be something that you're doing, it could be something that you love is doing, it could be something that an individual on the spectrum is doing, it could be something an individual not on the spectrum could be doing. What is the moment in time when things go off the rails, right? And I think you probably can tell me either a time of day or an activity that's like kicking your can right now, right? I think that's pretty common thing. But what happens so often is we then get fixated on that. For example, an example I give here a lot on the show is that there was a moment every day. At one point, we were living in this condo on a very busy street, and there was never any parking in the complex. So I would pick up my son from school, and we would have to park across the street, and we would have to get out of the car with cars that would come flying by, going way too fast. And in fact, at some point, a child got hit and injured gravely because of this exact situation. And I would be there with my son, and I would tell him not to get out of the car. I would get out of the car and and I would come around and I would open up the door for him and try to get him out and get him on the curb before somebody could hit him. You know what I'm saying? It was stressful for me. And he was just like lollygag, 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 right? And it made me really stressful. So I want you to think of a time like that. And then we are focused on the behavior. I was like, he doesn't get out of the car quickly, right? But the question we need to ask is what happens before? What's happening? Because we want to know what the behavior is or what the moment is in time, because the moment that's difficult is tied to some behavior. But if we don't look at what's happening right before, we're probably not going to be that successful in changing it. And if you're willing to look at what's happening before, it's like the keys to the kingdom to changing whatever the thing is. So when the school calls you and says, well, your child's behavior today was, they did this or that or whatever, the first question that you want to ask is, what happened before? If you like did something that you like promised yourself you weren't going to do, or you're like, why do I find myself here always? Instead of focusing so much on that, go back and say, well, what happened right before? We're really looking at what triggers the events to happen. And sometimes it's because there's a problem, but sometimes there's an absence of something. So, for instance, for my son getting out of the car, when my experts were able to get me to look at it as other than, we're going to get killed, right? And take all the emotion out of it and say, how are you preparing to get out of the car? Because in actuality, what was happening is he wasn't so much lollygagging, he was trying to get his stuff together to get out of the car because he would have taken something out of his backpack and I'd be like, why did you take that out of your backpack? But the truth of the matter is if I was willing to sit in the car, not anybody get out of the car, but we would sit in the car, get calm, and I would say, do you have all your stuff together? Is everything in your backpack? Is your backpack in your hand? I'm going to come around and open the door, and you have to be ready. I have your backpack on your lap, and then you're going to get out and you're going to go right to the curb. When I was willing to do that, to work on the moment before, the moment of became easier. So, and the same thing with, almost any behavior that we or anyone engages in. If there's an issue with a moment, ask what happens before and ask yourself, what can I change about what's happening before? Sometimes there's nothing you could change. Like I would like to think that I could change how fast the cars were going by yelling at them and occasionally making rude gestures at people, which I did. It did not change the behavior. I didn't really, and I petitioned for with the other parents, where they put up signs, they put up speed bumps. There were still people who would go flying over the speed bump and grind their car out. I can't control their behavior, but I could control saying to my son, stop, put everything in your backpack, get it on your lap. And let's, I'm going to get out of the car now. And as soon as I open the door, you come out and go stand on the curb. I could do that. So antecedent, what happens before? I think if you're willing to look at any part of your day that's not going well and ask yourself the question, what's happening right before? It's a game changer, you guys. So that's the antecedent. When we talk about changing behavior, we talk about the ABCs of behavior. A is the antecedent. B is the behavior. We need to know what the behavior is, but we're not going to have a whole lot of control over the behavior. We have some control over the antecedent. So it's A, B, C is for consequence. And we have a lot of control over the consequences. And we'll talk about that on another day. But antecedent, what happened before? Anytime someone comes to you and tells you that your child, or, oh, thank you, Susanna, that your child or that you have done something inappropriate, best first question, what happened before? I was just sharing with somebody the other day that there was a little boy who deviled my son when he was in preschool. He just knew how to push all of my son's buttons. And it was very common that I would get a note that would come home from preschool and they would say, oh, well, Jem got into a little trouble today, and they would say to me, he kicked a boy in the bathroom. He kicked him in the bathroom. And of course, I want to know a whole bunch of different things, but I would always say, what happened before? And a lot of times they would go, oh, we don't really know, but it was always the same kid. And it was a kid who was known for deviling. I'm like, my kid doesn't just kick someone. What happened before? So I didn't have control over how much access this kid had to my son. And I didn't have control, but I could prepare my son for things that he could do when this kid deviled him. And then we didn't have the behavior anymore. So antecedent, a very, very good. Oh, somebody says, hello, update. My son is talking more. I love that. That just made my whole day. Okay, so moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question, bum, ba, bum, is what do you want to accomplish in 2021? Notice I'm not asking you for a resolution. I'm asking you what you would like to accomplish. Like when we meet back here in 2022, stop. It just seems so unreal, right? What do you want to say that you have done? And I'm on this kick where I've decided that this is that I'm treating this COVID thing as a spa vacation, an extended spa vacation. and trying to see what what I can accomplish in terms of self-care and mental health and that kind of thing. And I'm just lying to myself that it's a spa vacation. But the truth of the matter is that if I want to get up and do a foot soak every morning, I really can. And there's probably not going to be another time in my life when I can. So I want some of the things that I want to accomplish in 2021. I want to have seen my son graduate from high school. We're on track for that. That has been my goal for I don't know how many years. Um, but I also want to see him happy, right? And my personal goals, I'm working on self-care and helping myself to be healthier. And I want to be healthier on January 2022 than I am today. And I can tell you that I am healthier today than I was a year ago today. So progress, not perfection, right? Progress. What do you guys want to accomplish in 2021? You can write it right into any of the platforms that you're on right now, anything that you want to share, but I hope you're thinking about it. I also want to say that I in 2020, I finished my book. And I think that in 2022, I'm going to be able to share that with you. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but my son, 9 years, doesn't talk and he gets speech therapy. I want to talk more with you about that. I want to know, does he say any sounds or words? And are you using an assistive communication? Does he have functional communication right now? Does he have a way to communicate his needs? Are you doing a picture exchange, or does he have an iPad, or a way that he can talk? The studies show that more and more kids on the spectrum are talking, some of them later, but they will talk faster if they're given functional communication first. So if he doesn't already have some way of communicating his needs, it's going to be really important for you and for him to give that to him as fast as possible. If you've ever been in a circumstance where you weren't able to communicate your needs, it's the single most frustrating thing on the planet. Okay, so he has 10 words and an AAC device. So that tells me that you're doing a great job, Mom. You're doing a great job. And we just want to keep reinforcing every time he communicates, in whatever way he communicates, how powerful that is. And when you get to frustration points with him, because it's frustrating when you can't communicate your needs, right? We want to be able to bring him ways to communicate what he's feeling and what he wants. And I can hear it's hard when somebody is 9 and we don't have vocal communication yet. I don't want you to give up. um, I want you to be thinking of letting him communicate in whatever way that he can, and reinforcing that, rewarding that. Because the more that you do that, the more he will begin to understand that being able to communicate is the way that he can get his needs met, and his life will be infinitely easier as a result of that. I hope you're working with somebody who's really good at facilitating that functional communication. How can I meet Dr. Doreen? Yeah, well, and she's the best of the best, right? You can get on Dr. Doreen's schedule to do a consultation, especially if you're willing to do a Zoom consultation as a parent, a caregiver. And if you want to write to me, I can send that your request to her assistant. I'll just forward it to her, and they'll get you on her schedule. In COVID, usually her schedule books out 6 months in advance, but in COVID, if you're looking for a Zoom meeting, it's infinitely more possible. It's still a waiting list, but it's nowhere near 6 months. So my email, and I think Traven can put it up on the screen, but for those of you who are listening in podcast, my email is S as in Shannon, dot Penrod, P as in Peter, E as in egg, N R as in robot, O as in Oscar, D as in dog, at autism-live.com. So it's autism, you all know how to spell that, hyphen the dash live.com. And there it is on the screen for those of you who are watching. And anybody who wants an appointment with Dr. Doreen, you can write to me and I will forward it to her assistant, and she will see about getting you on the schedule. But I think that, that's a wise choice. Okay, we got to move on because I got great guests that are joining us in just a second. So our topic for this week, and I already gave it away earlier, is about renewal, right? That we want to refresh, we want to restart, renew. The secret is that you can do that whenever you want to. It can be 2:30 on a Thursday, and you can go, I'm pushing the restart button and I'm starting today over. I'm starting, how I feel over. I'm, whatever. You can do it whenever you want to. But I think that it's all a little bit meaningful to us to do it at the beginning of the year. It's just another opportunity, is what it is. And I'm asking all of us to take the opportunity to, shed what was before, look at something that is bothering you with fresh eyes, be willing to restart and ask yourself, if I were going to restart, if I was going to start all over, what would I do differently? And you might find that you're like, no, for reasons aplenty, I'm going to keep things the way they are. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to redo everything and throw everything out with the bathwater. But I think it's worthwhile when we check ourselves. A lot of times we'll do things and it's because, well, I have to. Well, I have to do this and I have to do that and I don't have a choice. And that's a little bit of a lie that we tell ourselves. We always have choices. I remember a friend who was saying, well, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice that my child has autism. No, that's absolutely true. You don't, but you have a choice of how you respond to it. And they were saying, well, I have to do all this stuff more because of it. But the truth of the matter is, the really horrible truth is I've seen parents who've said, I can't, and who have given their child over to the love and care of someone else. Like that has happened, and that is tragic to me. But I've also seen that when somebody was selfless enough to say, look, I'm really not up to this, and had somebody else do it, those children thrive. Right. And the truth is that we all have choices. I i certainly made the choice, and I think all of you make the choice every day that we want to be the best possible parents that we can for our kiddos, right? But it's so important to remember that that is a choice, and that you are choosing to do that on a daily basis because you're awesome, right? And that's a much different language than, well, I have to do this. I struggle with the dishes, man. The dishes are my nemesis. Such a stupid thing, right? It's so stupid that I get so fatoutsed about, dishes. It's never ending. The cooking, the cleaning, and the dishes is just never ending, and it's so boring I could throw up on it, right? But and that's one way of looking at it. But the other way of looking at it is, man, how lucky am I that I have dishes and that I have food to put on it and I've got a sink to put them in and I've got running water and I have soap to put on them. And I even have a dishwasher. Like I am redonkulously lucky. I know a lot of people who don't have those things. And then it becomes a meditative process that I wash my dishes and I'm not angry at the dishes anymore. Good morning. Saying good morning to our journey, Cameron's new life. Woo! Glad you're here. So it's a new day, a new time to look at whatever's kicking your keister and ask yourself, like, can I look at this a different way? And would my life be better if I looked at this a different way? I try to write every morning, and my question this morning was, who would I be if I let go of all of the anger that I have? And you guys, I got some anger. Like all of you, I mean, I have some anger. And I thought this morning I wrote it, I was like, what would be left of me? Like, would there be would I just be a pile of dust? Like just like an arc of dust if I let go of all the anger. But I'd love to see, like, maybe I just would be, I know for sure I would be lighter. And I want to feel lighter. So it's an opportunity, refresh, restart, renew, whatever's kicking your keister, can you let go of it? Now, I've got the best medicine in the world for letting go and being grateful, because I got two great guests that are here with us and they've been waiting patiently. So we're welcoming back to the show Jordan Kamnitzer and Tony Kent. There you guys are. How are you?
We're fine.
I'm so excited to see you guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You too. Yeah.
So I sort of build you guys as self-advocates. Is that a fair way of describing you?
Yes. Yeah.
I know
Okay.
times have been tough right now. Times have been tough.
Yes, times have been tough. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about with you guys. And I wonder, so for our audience who doesn't know you guys, help us to know a little bit about you. Jordan, do you want to start?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, I've been a self-advocate for several years, and I have been aware of the issues and the situations that have been going on. And both me and Tony were the subject of the video Perfectly Normal, which was done through the New York Times, that came out over 3 years ago. And we are both still very proud of it itself. Unfortunately, for a while, actually since March 17th, as a result of COVID-19, I was furloughed due to my precondition with heart failure. And I first thought that I would get my job back only part-time, but it's not to be, because the company I worked for, Social Studies School Services, became an online company. And because that the landlord did not renew the lease at the Culver City location, they moved to the East Gardena location, which has fewer people and is smaller. I've made deliveries there to and from when I was employed there, but except for what I could do with limited access on the computer remotely, there wasn't enough for me that could get me rehired again. And so by September 30th, that was when it was official termination, when I had to change the health plans. And I do miss my job very, very much after 32 years. It's very emotional, and I've seen how half of the empty building looks from it. It will never be the same
So
again.
32 years you worked at that job, Jordan.
Yes, I have.
And you have a birthday coming up. I don't want to tell on you and tell how old you are, but you have a birthday coming
Okay.
up.
You'll be 21.
Well, actually,
You'll be 21.
actually,
And
officially,
not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday for his
He'll be
21st
21.
birthday. I'm going to take him out to lunch.
well, officially, I am really going to be turning 60, since I was born January 26th of
No,
1961.
Jordan's going to be 21.
I love it.
Don't try it.
21.
Don't listen
I
to
love
her.
it. So it's
But
Listen.
for real, I am
Listen
going
to
to take him out to lunch next Sunday for
Okay.
his birthday.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're going to do that, Tony, and
And I'm
congratulations.
gonna give him a little bit of money too for his birthday too as well.
Don't wreck all the surprises, Tony.
Well, he
Sorry.
already knows.
Yeah, it's
He
okay.
already knows.
Okay.
Okay. So
But I can't go
Listen to
anywhere
her.
expensive.
Okay.
But he knows that.
All right.
I can't go anywhere expensive. But there's a place in the valley, and it's called Patty's. And I've been there with my friends June and David several times. It's very, very good, and it's
I
very
love it.
reasonable.
Yes.
And that's where I'm going to take them for lunch next Sunday.
I love that.
Go ahead.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the employment situation, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that there, for folks in because I'm in the same age range too, Jordan. I'm 58 now. And so these are very critical years. So you worked 32 years and you're 60, so you couldn't retire, and now they've let you go. So were you like poised to be able to retire in a couple of years, and now you've lost that opportunity there?
No, I guess I was going to be working till about the age of 65 or so.
Okay. But now you're not able to retire from there, which is devastating, I would assume.
Yeah.
And so I've been watching, because we're friends on Facebook, and it's been rough. You've been looking for jobs, have even started jobs, only to find out that they weren't exactly right for you. There was at least one job where you had to do a lot of heavy lifting. Is that correct?
No, there were two jobs. One was an industrial thing where fiberglass was done, amidst the dust and all that. And that was like located in the Chatsworth area to the staffing agency on that after that one day, told me to find another job. But unfortunately, some other jobs weren't to be. And the second one was a place called Rugables, located in the Inglewood Gardena section. Uh, but they said the job was not right for me, although I did not mind doing the things and tasks like putting fabrics of rugs into bins uh, or cleaning janitorial job, which is what like with the other job was on cleaning the toilets and the portable areas, or to even be bringing cardboards and putting them into the bins. And I was going to learn how to use one of those type of cleaning guns or whatever, but that wasn't to be. The staffing agency had said that my employment there had ended. And of course, it was a shame. So I'm still, in the process looking online through Indeed.com and ZipRecruiter and other organizations for employment. And I've had interviews, but several of them have not been picked.
Yeah. Who else is helping you to look? Because is the Department of Vocational Rehab, are they helping you at all, Jordan?
Department of Rehab, yes, Asian Rehab from Orange County. There's a woman named Minji Kim who's trying to also help find opportunities for that. And secondly, I would say the one who's also been helping is Jewish Vocational Services. They mentioned workforce or job force, though people cannot go in for their classes. They had to just fill out things, and such as even selective services for proofs and other things in order to be admitted and to be given services for that.
Okay. I know because we had somebody else who wrote in this week, Jordan, and was saying that they're 25 and that they're looking for work in the Valley and they were wanting resources. So I did a crazy thing. I just went online and I registered at one job place, and I have been inundated with emails talking about jobs and the like. I'm going to forward some of them to you because they're telling me that everybody under the sun is hiring. Obviously, a lot of them are driving jobs, and I don't know if that's something that interests you,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I've gotten a bunch of notices, so I'm going to forward some of them to you. You'll look through them and see if there's anything that appeals to you. But I think we all need to stand in solidarity with you, helping you to find other employment. Now, have they approved you for unemployment while you're looking?
Yes, I have been on EDD, and it's been extended a few times for me. And yeah, I've been getting the services. Yes, I have gotten the stimulus ones too.
Okay.
And on the other hand, I want to say Tony has been furloughed from the Westside Regional Center
Yeah.
twice.
Well, let's talk about that. So, Tony, so you're currently furloughed?
Yeah, and my job coach, which was really nice, has been calling me up and checking up on me and see how I'm doing. But I don't know when I'm going to come back to work or not. But I definitely do know I do feel good about this and secure that I'm not fired, and
Right.
I didn't do anything wrong. And this whole thing isn't my fault, so, and I didn't do anything wrong. And, and Jordan didn't do anything wrong either. But
Right.
at least I feel secured that my job coach has been calling me up and checking on me, and I don't know when they're going to call me to go back to work, but I'm still getting paid, but I'm not fired. So, and I didn't do anything wrong, and that's
That's
good.
important. That's
But
important.
right now, I mean, anybody that has a job right now, they're very lucky because it's very hard to find
Yeah.
jobs nowadays, especially during this pandemic, thing. And so many places have been closed and stuff like that. And everything. People can't feed their children or medicine for the doctor or their kids, or they've been evicted from their apartment, whatever. And I'm really grateful that I don't have to worry about those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, Tony, your healthcare, because you were furloughed, your healthcare is continuing, correct?
Yes.
But Jordan, I'm concerned about when you were eventually laid off, now no longer furloughed. You were saying you needed to change your healthcare. Is your healthcare intact at the moment, or is that a
Yes,
problem?
I do have Medi-Cal. I could not be both on this and on Blue Shield or Blue Cross at the same time. in order to get that with these benefits. Same with the CARES thing itself. So it took time for me to do so, to learn about what has to be so in order to avoid conflicts of interest with healthcare services and other issues itself, and what is going there.
Now, you guys identify as being boyfriend and girlfriend, but you live separately. Is that correct?
Yeah, I live in my place. I've been lately back and forth to Jordan's, back at my place, back at Jordan's, back at my place, back at Jordan's, back and forth. And that's pretty good, but, I had a special friend that, I knew she was sick with pancreatic cancer. And I've been friends with her for over 30 years. And she and I have been dieting together about our weight, keeping our weight down, eating the right foods and stuff like that. But, I've been eating differently than her, but she was 82 and I called up just to wish them a happy holiday. And her husband, said that I didn't know this, that 2 days before Thanksgiving, she passed away. And it was really a little bit of a shocking thing, but I knew she was sick for a long time and she was 82. And, I just felt so bad. And, the most strangest thing is, I sent my condolences to her husband, and I've known him for over 30 years. He's getting up there. He's in his 80s, but, luckily he's not by himself. He has family and stuff that's taking care of him. But, I want to right now give him some space right now, because he said it's like he doesn't really feel like talking or answering the phone, which is totally understanding. He has my number, and I told him if he needs anything or want to talk, feel free to call me. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 in the morning. And, right now I want to give him some space right now, or something like that. And I did what all we could, but I mean,
I'm so sorry,
yeah.
Tony, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm wondering, in this pandemic, I'm so glad that you guys have a pod together, that you are comfortable with being able to be with each other, because I know some couples are separated. How are you dealing with all of the things with COVID, and how are you staying safe and healthy?
Well, I mean, being responsible, doing my chores, running my errands, do what we have to do, stuff like that, keeping busy, and I feel very, very lucky, very, very lucky to have Jordan, very lucky, to have him. And, I do worry a lot about losing him, and what I'm really, really worried, about is like, I worry about him because I cannot pay his bills, at least he's getting help. His brother is helping him out with things, that I couldn't do, so I'm grateful he has a wonderful brother and family and nephews and stuff like that. And so I'm very grateful that he has that too. But, there's some things that they can do for Jordan that I can't do. And I can only do so much, and I'm
Sure. Are you guys, I don't
know.
mean to interrupt, but are you guys mask wearers when you go out and about? Are you wearing masks?
Oh, yeah,
Yes, we
absolutely.
do.
You can fine for that. I heard if you don't wear a mask, you can get
In
fined.
selected cities, I heard of
Yeah.
that. And by the way, I do get still on the side of what I've been doing also in the spare time. Yes, I've been still involved with remote classes, the virtual classes with the Jazz Hands for Autism organization. Yes, there have been a couple of virtual concerts that I hope you've seen any one of them in itself. And get the classes now, 6 of them for this quarter or semester itself.
And you're teaching those classes, is that correct, Jordan?
I'm not teaching. No, I'm just a student and
You're
learning.
a student. I thought
Yeah.
you were teaching, because you're a very accomplished pianist and you write songs.
Yes.
So you're taking the classes. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I've been taking them online and all that, and all these different changes, what it has to be with the lifestyle itself for everything and all of that, and doing whatever is necessary to keep our spirits and everything all
Yeah.
alive.
Have you been able to find time to do things that maybe you wanted to do before, but you didn't have time? Is there anything, like a lot of people have learned something new or done something? Is there anything that you guys have been able to do in COVID that you couldn't do before?
Not
that we
really.
not
Not
know
really.
of, no.
Not really much. I've also, I could say, passing some of the time, and I like to watch on YouTube those doc spots. I mean, it's documentaries, many of them from the History channels or A&E or Discovery channels, which I find interesting educational pleasure of history I never knew about.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the job that you were doing before. Um, so if you were going to look for a dream job right now, Jordan, we got people watching. What would your dream job be right now?
My dream job would be something either similar from some of my past or other duties of jobs, rather clerical or delivery driver services, or I would say either or cashier services, or even some computer work with Excel or Word or warehouse work itself. Any of those, I mean, would be fine for me full time and above minimum wage for $15 or so per hour.
Okay. And Tony, your expectation is that you're going back to your job. So you're
Yeah,
not
but I don't
looking
know
for
when.
a job. Yeah.
But I can only
Well,
work
hopefully.
part time. I
Yeah.
can't work full time, but I'm definitely going back to my job, but I just don't know when,
Yeah, because she's on SSI.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, but that is not your case. Is that correct, Jordan?
No, I could never be on SSI because I drive and I get around. That's another amenities I
And
have.
all the job applications Jordan has filled out and interviews and stuff that was never ever able to do by myself that Jordan can, because in some ways Jordan has more knowledge than I do.
Yeah.
His skills are more higher functioning than I do, but I can only do so much, and I do try very hard, but I am very grateful to have Jordan, and he's all who I have. And it's been a very scary situation, lately.
But
And
I'm
I
so
don't
grateful that you do have each other. And I,
what
we
my
all have
concern,
things
yeah.
that we're better at, and each one of you is remarkable in your own way, Tony. So, but I'm so glad that
can't
you
drive.
guys have each other.
Yeah, I can't
And
drive. I can't drive
yeah,
because of the
and that's
medication
okay.
that I'm on, and I
Right.
have to take that medication
Yeah,
for my
sure.
Tourette's for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
I can't drive. Luckily, Jordan can drive too. He's lucky, but everybody is smart in their own ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And so, if you guys, I mean, I think that the world is in a very precarious place right now, but I do think that there are some people who are listening more than ever. And if there was a message, Jordan, that you wanted to send to politicians and people who are in the place of being able to make decisions about what it's like for you guys right now in the pandemic, what would you like to say to them?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say, that we learn to survive and do sort of alternative things to try to keep things going. There are a lot of things, of course. I missed like the celebrations of some of the Jewish holidays here and there. Uh, but then we have to make the best of all these things, to keep ourselves busy and intact, in our work.
But what I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for, which is good news, but it's still going to take time. They found a vaccine.
Yes.
So, but I did hear. Now, of course, this comes first. The fire department, paramedics, nurses, doctors, caregivers, elderly people in convalescent homes, policemen, and teachers and stuff, they get their shots first. They come
Yes.
first.
Yes,
So,
but now in California, just the other day, they made it so that anybody over the age of 65.
I heard
heard.
about that. I have a friend that's in his 70s. I told him that, but the thing is, you have to make an appointment through email, and he's not able to do that. And I told him maybe someone can help him do that, because
Yeah.
maybe Jordan can do that, but hey, I certainly can't.
Yeah, well, and this goes right to the heart of, I think, what we should be talking about as a nation is that we put in place some systems that not everybody can access. And that's not fair or appropriate. Now, I'm curious because earlier in the conversation, you were saying that you have a job coach, Tony, and
Very,
yet
very nice lady. Very, very nice
and
lady.
yet you have a job that you're going back to. Jordan, do you have a job coach?
No.
No, he
Why is
wouldn't,
that?
he wouldn't qualify because he has more skills than I do. You know what I mean? He, for an example, if he had another job, his job would be at a higher position than me. that I couldn't do because he has more skills, more knowledge than me.
Yeah,
And
but you
more
could probably,
I
we could all use a job coach, couldn't we?
But
It
hey,
seems like,
I am very grateful for my
yeah,
job coach, and my supervisors, and where I work. It's wonderful. You know what? There are some people that are disabled that they're not able to work. That you know
that's
what I
right.
mean. So
That's
we
right.
should all be grateful that we are able to work. Some can, some can't. You know.
Yeah, one could also think of two pop songs regarding about job searching. One of them, I have to say, is by the Silhouettes That Do Up group called Get a Job with a Shana Na Na
Oh
Shana
yeah,
Na.
I remember
And the
that.
other one is the comeback song by Gary U.S. Bonds called I Need a Job, I'm Out of Work. It was thanks to Bruce Springsteen, who helped him revive his career.
And so are these kind of the songs that run through your head while you're applying for jobs, Jordan?
Some of them, yeah, I would say so. Yeah, even when they're far different times of that, sure.
Now, I'll
Yeah.
tell you one thing for an example. This is for an example. If I worked at the Cheesecake Factory for an example, I bet you 2-1 by the end of this week, I would weigh 300 pounds.
See,
And
me too.
Jordan would have to roll me home. You know how tasty that is, how many calories that is.
Yeah.
Look on the internet, look on your computer, cheesecakefactory.com, and you can see how many calories
Yeah.
one little tiny piece of cheesecake
Sure.
is.
Is cheesecake your thing, Tony? Is cheesecake your
My
thing?
favorite place to eat,
Got
you
it.
know. So that's like but there is one thing that I really liked at the Cheesecake Factory. It is not fattening. It's on the skinny menu. It's the Mexican tostada salad. That is delicious. And they
That's
give you a
wonderful.
huge
Jordan,
portion.
what's your favorite
Yes.
thing to eat
Yeah,
when
that's
out?
yes.
Yes, what's it?
What's your favorite thing to eat when you're out, Jordan?
Well, I would say one of my favorite restaurants are like his Casablanca restaurant in Venice on Lincoln and Rose, and they give you a lot, but it is not spicy, and I enjoy it very much. It has the interiors based on the movie of the same name.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, now things are a takeout
Yes,
thing right
yeah.
now. You gotta eat
everything is
things are
everything is takeout. But for people who have not met you guys before, they should go and watch that documentary. Is it still available on the New
Yes.
York Times website?
Yes.
And what is the name of it again, Jordan?
New York Times, Perfectly Normal.
New York Times Perfectly Normal. If you guys will Google that, you will find it. It's a short film, like 14 minutes, right?
Uh,
And
yeah.
it's absolutely beautiful because it really is just sort of slice of life. We get to spend some time with the two of you and see what your life was like pre-COVID. We get to watch you guys grocery shop, and the like. But for people who haven't seen it, how long have you guys been a couple?
We've been a couple now since 1992. That's how long we've been going together. So we've been going together for 28 years.
That's amazing. And how did you guys first meet?
Well, we first met was in the format. I'd met her sometime, at Santa Monica College a few times when she was going with other people, and I saw her in social groups like LA Gold and Haverim. And then after nearly 4 years of a dry spell where I didn't have a girlfriend, we took a chance at it, and it is beautiful. And we went out together and went to places and showed videos, and it is beautiful. I mean, we've been through both good and bad times together, and we've learned a lot from each other.
So Tony, what was it about Jordan that you looked at and you went, "Oh, this is the guy for me"?
Well, I kind of felt bad about really something. I was really apologetic to Jordan that a friend introduced me to me at Santa Monica College, and God, when I first met him, I shook his hand, and Jordan says maybe sometime we can go. I'll go out to eat or for a drink. First time I met him, I said, "Wow," and I says, "Yeah, maybe sometime Linda, and you and I maybe can go have a drink." And then he says, "What about just you and I?" And I says, "Yeah, that would be good sometimes." And then we exchanged numbers. He kept calling me and wanting me to come to his house. I was kind of shy. I felt kind of embarrassed, but he kept saying and kept calling me to come on over. And I says, okay, just this one. So, okay, I will. And I started to, and then more and more and more I came over. And that's how I started to get stuck with him.
Yeah.
And then I told him how sorry I am that I was shy and I didn't mean to ignore him, and so forth. But I'm glad he didn't turn away from me. So he was the guy for me. And I mean, there are very few people that have had a relationship like this for all these years, but we can't get married, but that's okay, but still I'm really
why can't you get married? What is the reason
because
why you can't?
number one, I would not have enough money and my SSI would be terminated and he could not support me financially. Even with my SSI, it would not be enough money to live on or
But
so.
I feel like the world needs to hear that the support.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like the world needs to hear that the support that's set up for you would not.
Hey, I am very grateful
Sure.
for my apartment and my roommate. I'm with a low income thing, a home ownership made easier for the regional center, low housing, and a wonderful roommate in a nice area. It's like a condominium. I don't have to worry about my rent or my bills or anything. I am extremely lucky.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But if you could have
yeah.
if you could have all of that and you and Jordan could be married, would you guys want to be married?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the thing is, we can't. Jordan can stay with me in my apartment because of the rules. I don't make the rules, and I could not stay with him either, but we're back and forth, back and forth, I'm very grateful for that, But
And I appreciate that. I just feel like the system needs to change a little bit because love like yours should not be prohibited from being married. It's like the next thing we need to fight for.
guy,
Yeah,
by the way, he's
exactly.
really
It's
getting
joking.
on my nerves.
Yeah,
you know
right
what I
there.
mean? So, and no, I'm just kidding. I'm
Yes,
just
yes, yes.
joking. Yeah, I'm just joking,
Yes.
Jordan.
And the thing I always
Jordan,
yeah.
Jordan, what was it about Tony? What did you see in Tony that made you so bold that you were like, no, I just, the two of us, I want to get together. And it sounds like you were pretty persistent that you pursued. What was it about Tony that you saw and that you were like, this is the gal for me?
Well, it was her nice personality and her friendliness and givingness that, in a way, turned me on, kind of thing like what her friend Linda was also, and uh, it was due to her, nice talking, and also for her love of cats and other animals is also the thing that turned me on. And the thing she always loves to say is, "You've hurt its feelings." Uh, as a joke. I mean, because she says that's another way of saying, "Oh, poor sweet baby," and this was the kind of thing of a type of caring. So, I mean, through good and bad times, that we've been here and there together and learned a lot from each other in the process.
Well, we're just about out of time here, but I just want to say I'm so thrilled that we got to have you guys on in the first week of the new year. I think you guys are such an inspiration to so many of us because you have so much love for each other and you're such good people. We wish you the very best. Jordan, I hope you find your dream job in the coming weeks and that you guys are able to take some of the time that COVID is forcing you to not work and spend that time together doing things that you really enjoy. But we hope that we all get back to work and back to normal as soon as possible.
Take time,
Yeah.
It's
going to take time.
all over the world.
And I see that, I guess, one of the reasons why you're doing the interview from your home instead of at the studio, I guess, for those reasons.
Exactly. We've been doing the show remotely since the beginning of March. So, and we thought that was just going to be for a couple of weeks, and pretty soon it's going to be a year. We will have been doing this for a year. But like you, I am so grateful. I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to continue to do my job and to continue to showcase folks like you. I'm incredibly grateful that I have the opportunity to do that and stay at home and be safe. So last thoughts, you guys, because we're going to be out of time. What do you want to say to the folks at home?
Jordan, can I ask you a question?
What's it?
Am I an awful person?
It's not like in the film, "Am I a lousy gopher?" which I tell her not, that she isn't. I mean, it's sort of similar to that, but she is not. Otherwise, we never would have been together as My mom used to call Dad miserable husband or miserable father when he came home late with his charades as architect.
I'm
Mm.
sorry, Jordan, that I'm a terrible person,
You're
you know,
not.
and I get on your
But-
nerves a lot too, you know.
I think Tony,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
just joking.
I think Tony says that, Jordan, just to hear you say that you're a wonderful person, because
Yeah.
Exactly.
you light up when you
Words
say
right
it.
out of my mouth, yeah. But
That's
we
good.
get on each other's nerves
sure.
all the time, back and forth, you know. Nobody is
Yes.
perfect, you
Right.
know
No
what I
one
mean?
is.
If anybody
Well,
was perfect, it would be a dull world, you know.
Right.
that's right.
No
On
person-
that note, we got to say goodbye because we're out of time, but we love you guys. We want people to Google New York Times, always end on a kiss. New York
Remember
Times,
that I'm
and
taking you out to lunch.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
perfectly normal.
To lunch.
And happy birthday, Jordan.
Thank
Hey,
you.
he's 21.
60 officially. January 26th.
All right, we love you guys. Hey, everybody, we're going to be back tomorrow live with a wonderful guest who is an advocate who helps folks to hook up to services. So we're so excited. Well, Let's Talk Autism back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from us and one for you as well. Bye-bye for now. We are live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and Periscope. So if you're on any of those platforms, please feel free to write in now and throughout the show to be a part of the show. If you're watching us later on in podcast, we welcome you. You still can ask questions. It's just easier to ask those questions on our homepage in the chat, autism-live.com. And what we try to do is answer questions when we can in the next live show. So we're saying hello that someone says that my son needs a service dog. We live in New York City and it's hard to get one and expensive, so I don't know what to do. Really want to encourage you that there are most of the organizations that do service dogs, the families have to do fundraisers. And there are
That's correct.
there are several organizations that will help you to match funds, but whatever service you start to use, find the service that you want to go through. It's a lengthy process, and as a family, you sort of have to jump through a lot of different hoops, but ask them, what do your families do to raise funds? Almost no one is able to afford a service dog. It's a really great thing. In fact, we have a story about having pets, and I realize a service dog is not a pet, but what it can do. But definitely find the service that you want to go with. They should be able to help you to fundraise. And then there are places where you can get grants and things to help. It's difficult right now because people are trying to raise money to be able to afford groceries and rent and other things. And it's harder right now, but it's not impossible. So talk to the service provider about that. I think that having a service dog is a really amazing thing. Nancy, I know you've done a lot of work with animals and
Right.
this, so it's worthwhile. Yes. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think it's extremely worthwhile in terms of helping a
Look,
child.
there's a dog now.
There's a dog now. There goes Molly. Molly just walked through the frame, and golden retrievers make great service dogs, by the way. But
Yes.
I worked at Act Today, I worked with a lot of service dog providers, and you're right, Shannon, they're extremely expensive. So generally, we would have the dog provider help the family figure out how to raise some of the funds, because the price tends to be prohibitive for even most grant organizations.
It's pretty expensive, but there are ways to do it. And
Yes.
I think it's a thing, even if you supplement by doing a GoFundMe or something like that. I think that enough people are dog lovers that they get it, how important this could be to change a life, and they generally want to help. I love that every time we say dog, one of the
A dog
dogs
walks through.
walks
Exactly.
walks in screening.
Right.
They're like right on cue. And we're saying hi to Gina, who every
My
once in a
best
while
friend is
walks
in the
by.
background too.
We love Gina.
Yeah.
So we've got this great guest, and I don't want to be late for her, but we also
Okay.
have our news stories to cover this morning. We've got 3 different news stories, and I don't necessarily want to do them in the order that I sent them to Nancy. I don't know how you feel about it, but we've got warring stories here about maybe the causes of autism, and maybe they're not warring, maybe they go together. Shall we start with the sperm story?
Yeah. The headline on this story is Biomarkers in a Father's Sperm Linked to Offspring Autism. And it's fairly dense, so I'm going to let you help me break it down, Shannon. That biomarkers in human sperm have been identified that can indicate a propensity to father children with ASD. Now, that's simple enough, but these biomarkers are epigenetic. And Shannon, do you have a good definition of epigenetic?
No, I'll be honest with you, it evades me. But my understanding is that it's something that can be passed down. That
Yes,
it's
I
hereditary.
understood it as when environment alters genetics.
There we go. But what I got out of this study is that they looked at 100 men, and they were looking at specific DNA methylation regions. And we know that methylation is when your body is able to take out environmental things and take out the trash. We
Right.
all are exposed to environmental toxins. And we were in every single generation. But our body's ability to take in, you inhale the truck that's going by, and your body has to process that toxin and sweat it out, or somehow move it out of your body so that it doesn't reside in your body and build up to toxic levels. And we know that our kiddos on the autism spectrum have a methylation problem. Their bodies don't take out the trash as well as other individuals. So what they did was they looked at 100 men's sperm, and they looked for these DNA methylation regions and found very specific areas, and first identified that these particular things would be prevalent for potentially fathering a child with autism. Then they took 100 cases of sperm, and they tried to just identify who might be a father of a child on the spectrum based on those things found in the sperm, and it was 90% accurate.
That's a
They
pretty
only
high
had-
level of accuracy. That's a pretty
Yeah.
huge percentage.
Yeah. And now they are saying it's just 100 men, and they had 2 false negatives. So they need to go back and do a bigger sample, but 90%, that's, that's big. And I think that this is going to be something that sort of rocks our community in a lot of different ways. And my husband and I have already had a conversation about this morning, because basically what they're saying is that at some point down the line, they could have a dad give a sperm sample, and they could tell them what their percentage would be of fathering a child on the autism spectrum.
Right.
And that, of course, leads to some conversations that aren't comfortable. I mean, my husband and I were talking about it this morning, and I said, I shudder to think, if we had been in a circumstance where we had known that he had a higher propensity to have a child with autism without having had a child with autism, I think that would have scared us. And I would not have wanted to have missed parenting Jem for anything under the sun.
Right. So it brings up the same ethical questions that amniocentesis brings up. And one of the reasons why we don't see as many people in the community with Down syndrome is because Down syndrome has all but vanished due to amniocentesis and parents being able to find out if they have a Down syndrome embryo. And choosing selective termination.
It kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I mean, I know you had a brother who was Down syndrome, so you might have different.
I can't imagine what life would have been like without him.
Yeah.
So it really brings up so many ethical questions, as does this study.
Yeah, I know we were pressured, really, because of my advanced age. When we were pregnant with Jem, we were pressured repeatedly by our healthcare provider to have amniocentesis. In order to sign off on it officially, because I said to them I was going to get a lawyer if they didn't stop asking me, they made us go in and have genetic counseling. And I said, sure, I'll sign up to do that. And both of us had to be present. And I'm not kidding you, the woman who did the genetic counseling for us was a thalidomide baby.
Oh, how isn't that
And
an interesting twist?
right. And I said, man, that's really so you have to sit there for an hour with an incredibly intelligent, compassionate young woman who had no arms or legs. She had hands and feet, but no arms or legs because she was a thalidomide baby, and talk with her about what the choices were that you were making. And we at the end of it said, we're not going to have an amniocentesis because if he's Downs, we're keeping, so there's no reason to check. But I know everybody feels differently about these things.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, as everybody's out there going, oh, okay, apparently it's genetically the dad's fault why a child is on the spectrum. Before you judge too quickly, there is an additional study in the news this week
yes,
that talks about the propensity for it coming from the mother.
yes.
And it might be that it's not necessarily genetic, but it's the mother's ability to metabolize carnitine seems to be in question now. What I
Yes,
love particularly about this study.
Go ahead, Shannon. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that one of the lead investigators on this is somebody that Jürgen Hahn from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, who we've had on the show. So I loved that. We got to have Jürgen come back and let us know more about this study. But what I cut you off too, Nancy. Go ahead and say what you want to say.
Well, this was based on blood samples that were taken, analyzed 2 to 5 years after they gave birth. And it basically showed that the mothers it has to do with metabolite levels, how they're metabolizing certain substances. And as you said, carnitine was implicated in this. Carnitine can be produced. There are many of the variances it says were linked to low levels of folate, vitamin B12, and carnitine conjugated molecules. Carnitine can be produced by the body and can come from meat sources, but there wasn't a correlation between mothers who ate more meat and mothers who had higher levels of carnitine.
Yeah, I really want to talk to Dr. Hahn about this because they're really focusing on the carnitine, but it really jumped out at me about the folate. Because for the folate, we know that there are the whole MTHFR. There are a lot of moms that are being diagnosed with MTHFR, and that means that your body won't process anything but folate. So I really want to talk to him more about this. The real asterisk here is that they only looked at moms whose children were already diagnosed with autism, so their kids were between the ages of 3 and 5. Now they're going to go back and look at these carnitine levels and the folate levels and the B12 levels of women who are pregnant, track whether they had a child with autism because they don't know if their level was low when they were pregnant. Like it would be very interesting to see because why is this particular group of women who have children on the autism spectrum, why is their carnitine level different? And they can identify them just like the dad's sperm. They can identify them and group them without knowing if their child is on the spectrum. They can identify it later. So I know we're getting a little bit of a feedback and we're trying to address that, you guys, but we're going to move on to our last.
Yeah, we're getting some popping, but now it seems to have stopped.
Yeah. So we're hoping that we've got that under control now. But also, the other study we kind of teased about it, talking about pets, is there's a new study out showing that if you want to boost your child's social skills, especially in COVID, it might mean adopting a cat. I found this
is a feel-good story because the study was in the Journal of Pediatric Nurse, looking at 11 families with children with autism ages 6 to 14. 4 of the families adopted a cat from a shelter right away, and were followed for 18 weeks. The remaining families were monitored for the initial 18-week period at which they adopted shelter cats and were followed by another 18 weeks. All of the families adopted cats who were screened using a feline all the families adopted cats who were screened using a feline temperament profile to ensure they were calm animals. And surveys were conducted every 6 weeks to assess the children's social skills and anxiety, as well as how the parent and their kids bonded with the new pet. So not only did the children with autism see improvements in their social skills, but both kids and their parents forged strong bonds with their pets, and those bonds remained over time.
So helping to build those social skills. Now I can hear all of you because I was like, well, what about dogs? What about dogs? And they said that there was previously a study done about dogs, and while there are benefits for any kind of a pet that you bond with, because dogs come with a different host of behaviors, that sometimes the benefit was not able to be received because the dog barked and it scared the child. So it really comes down to understanding, is this pet a good fit for your child? Because some dogs, I think, are great for socialization. But what made the cats a little bit more across the board successful, the behaviors that cats exhibit mostly aren't off-putting to the sensory issues that a child on the spectrum has. But you can do that in a dog. And I love Bitta, you're right on my page, Bitta. Why a cat? What does a cat do that a dog doesn't do? It's what a dog does that a cat doesn't do. But keep in mind that a dog can do the same things if we get the right dog for the right kid, is what the study suggests. So we know that a lot of people have adopted pets in COVID. And in the beginning, I was like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? That's crazy. They're going to go back to work in a month and then they're going to have this dog or this cat. And of course, that isn't what happened. And it has lowered people's stress levels. It has cleared a lot of the shelters, and has made people's quality of life go up. So if you're really concerned about social skills during COVID, it may be time to get a cat or to research and get the exact right dog that doesn't set your child's sensory issues off. So
right. There was a story on the evening news last night about how shelters are being cleaned out of dogs.
Yeah, well, but I'll bet that there's cats because there's always cats.
Right.
And don't we have in this loud don't we have in this loud world, get our sensory kids get used to noises? Yes, we do need to do that. But if what you're going for, it's always that thing about what are you working on? Why are you working on it? So if what you're doing is saying, we're going to get a pet for the family, for the warm fuzzy, that's one thing. If we're getting the pet because we want to work on social skills and we're hoping for the warm fuzzy, that's another thing. But if I don't think we would ever get a dog and say we're doing this to have them work on sensory issues. I think we would work on the sensory issues first and then get the dog, because the dog's a living, breathing thing. And I think it would be miserable for the dog because you'd have to have times when you would just totally remove it, because otherwise you're making it painful for the person, right?
Right.
So in any case, we've got a great guest and we kept her waiting a little bit. And she's remarkable, has a list of credits to her name that we're really excited to share. She's a special needs educator and a board certified behavior analyst, and is the head. She founded Claudia Cares Consulting. And Nancy, I'm stealing you usually do the best introductions. Do you want to pick up where I left off, or am I?
Sure. As Shannon said, she's a board certified behavior analyst, and she's worked with the California Regional Center and the Department of Rehabilitation Adult Programs. So she has lots of experience in working with school services and regulation. And this led her to create Claudia Cares because she wanted to support families through the secondary school transition and guide students through a meaningful transition to adulthood. And so she created an online course, The Right Path, which I have taken, and really brings up all the issues that you're going to encounter on the transition from secondary school to adult life. And she says we need to get started a lot earlier than we think. And let's welcome her to the show. Claudia?
Hello, we don't have your sound yet.
There we go. Thank you so
I'm
much.
wondering if I should.
Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear her now, Nancy. Can you hear her?
Yes, but there's a lot of static, so I'm going to let you take over the interview, Shannon.
Okay. All right.
I had muted myself
Thank you
when you
all.
guys had static, so I thought maybe that would take care of it.
Oh, well, I don't have the static at this point in time, but Claudia, we're so glad to have you here, and Nancy will come back and join when she can. But Claudia, we're really excited that you're able to be here with us in this first week of coming back, and we want to, in particular, talk about this transition time. Tell us first, though, about Claudia Cares and how people can contact you before we launch into this.
So the best way to contact me is probably by email, which is consulting@claudiacares.com, or through my website, which is claudiacares.com.
Okay, and as we start to talk about this, is a really stressful time for families when we start to talk about the transition from school to adulthood. In fact, a lot of people refer to it as the cliff, because it just feels like, we've had this structure for this really long period of time, and that we're going to lose it. So can you talk with us a little bit about what, it's not just on the parents to be a student for doing this, right? The school has some risk. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. And you're 100% right. A lot of parents say it's like falling off the cliff. Sometimes they'll refer to it as graduation to the couch because their child is just not prepared and there's nothing on the other side. And basically what's happening is that there's work that needs to be done prior to that moment. And some children, their secondary transition end at graduation in 12th grade. And some children end at 22 on the 22nd birthday when they go into adult services. And part of the reason that there is such a difference is because the laws change and parents aren't even aware necessarily that this is happening. For example, the IDEA, that is the one that drives the IEPs and all the services that they're getting through the schools, ends at graduation or at the end of secondary education. And so a lot of parents plan, for example, for their child to go to community college or even a four-year college, and the IEP does not go there. And so they're not prepared. And it's the preparation that is really what is needed. The other side that's really makes it even more difficult is that you're dealing with a teenager. So parents are dealing with like what's happening right there. And then at the same time, they're supposed to think about the future. So it's a double whammy and it's hard. That's the hard part. The good side of it is that if you start early, and IDEA says that it must begin by age 16, that is not soon enough if your child's getting a high school diploma. And the IEP team can make the decision to start at 14. And there are some states that already have those laws that it must begin at 14. But if a parent begins at 14, 13 with the assessment, it's really doable because then it's small steps. You can plan it out, you know where you're heading, you understand, and it's doable. So I think that's the good side, and that's what I really try to focus on with my families.
Wonderful. There's I think a lot of our viewers know what an IEP is, although we always have new people who come in, and so maybe we could talk a little bit about that. But I find that very few families, doesn't matter, even though we talk about it frequently on the show, I find that very few families know what an ITP is. So can you talk about an IEP and an ITP and fill us in about what an ITP should look like?
So an ITP is an individual transition plan. It is part of the IEP. It is often towards the end of an IEP. So some IEPs are 30 pages long, 25, and it's at the very end. And a lot of families and parents don't even recognize that it's there because it's thrown at the end of an IEP meeting. And so it's no wonder that they don't know. And also, if your child's 14 and suddenly it shows up there, you're like, I can't deal with that. There's so much going on now. I'm not going to deal with it now, later. And then it just becomes on the side. So the first thing that I tell families is that it is okay and probably even worthwhile to ask for the ITP portion of the IEP to be a separate meeting so that you can really focus on that. And so then you are actually looking at the transition as its own entity and are able to focus on that. And so that helps.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting because I don't think I knew what an ITP was until my son was 14 or 15. I don't think I'd ever heard anybody talk about it before then. And we had a guest who was on the show who talked about it. And I was like, what? I'm missing the boat here. How come I don't know about this? And then I started talking to other parents about it and going, do you know? Do you know? And I found that most people didn't. And that when we all then marched back to our school and said, hey, does my child have an ITP? It was pretty much 50-50. That about 50% of them, oh yeah, it's attached to the back part of the IEP, but a bunch of people were like, what? No. That some school districts, it's just like they just haven't been doing it. And I keep saying to parents, it's now incumbent upon us to know about it, to request it, to ask about it, and to make sure that it's happening. Are you seeing that more schools are doing it, or do you see that parents really have to be proactive like that, Claudia?
I have seen it almost exclusively always in the IEP.
Okay, good. Good. That's great.
Well, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it's good that it's there, but it's not necessarily an ITP that meets the child's needs. You know, the goals in the individual transition plan are not hopes, they're not dreams, they're goals. So
Absolutely.
you'll hear, you know, I'll see goals like I want to be an airline pilot. I want to I'm trying to think of things, you know, that I've seen there. They want to go to college, so they write it as and some of them may be actually doable. It's not my place to say where they are or aren't, but what the goal needs to have is components in it that show what is the school, what is happening within those school years that will help them reach that goal.
Right.
Like,
Because you don't just, the airline fairy doesn't come and bonk you in the head and make you an airline pilot. You have to do a lot of things to be able to get there, a lot of things.
correct.
Brandy has said having the ITP as a separate meeting seems like a great idea to give it the focus that it deserves. I agree with you, Brandy. So that's a great tip already. What can parents do to help their children to prepare for the future and to prepare for adulthood and to prepare themselves for the ITP meeting?
So, you know, there's a lot of different things. So let's put the education to the side, everything that the school has a responsibility. There are 4 other areas that they need to look into. One of them is government programs, and that is state specific. Here in California, we're pretty lucky. We have, you know, even though while we're living here, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's good enough, but in comparison to other states, we're in pretty good shape. But there are government services, there are medical waivers and things like that that can help get services after schooling, because a lot of times and again, it's very state specific, but a lot of services do come from the schools while the child is in school. So what you want to look forward and say to see what services are available in the states you live in that you can tap into once your child leaves school. And some of them would be things like also vocational agencies and things like that. So that's one thing, government services. The other area is financial preparation, things like understanding that you can apply for SSI the moment your child is 18. Sometimes families don't understand that their financials do not go into play the moment their child turns 18 years old. Another thing to look into is your legal areas. You know, do you want to do conservatorship, or here in California, limited conservatorship or guardianship? What are the pros? What are the cons? You know, medical decision making, all sorts of things like that. And doing those things before the child is 18, looking into them. I'm not saying necessarily doing it because it's very personal decision. So that's, you know, I don't get into that part of it because I do think that it depends on your culture, it depends on your situation and all that. And the other thing that families need to look at is medical options. For example, some doctors don't see kids after the age of 21. If that is your child and you've been with your doctor for 20 years, 21 years, the last thing you want to know is hear about it 3 months before.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing that you would really want to look into. will your doctor continue providing the support that your child needs? If not, then what does the transition look like? Um,
Can
and
we go back and talk about the SSI for just a second? Because I have a question about that.
yes,
So if your child is already getting SSI and they turn 18, do you have to reapply for them, or it's
no,
just going to go straight through?
it goes straight through.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
And then on the other side, I was talking to somebody the other day because my son is a senior in high school and getting ready to go to college. And they were saying, oh, make sure you apply for him to get SSI when he turns 18. And I said, oh, that's not going to apply to us because he doesn't identify as having a disability. So that's not going to apply. And they were saying to me, oh, that doesn't matter. You can still apply. And I was like, I don't think he's going to do it. But yesterday on the show, we had two wonderful self advocates, one of them who's about to turn 60 on the autism spectrum. He had worked at a job for 38 years. He drives a car. And now in COVID, first he was furloughed and now he's lost his job. His job no longer exists because they've had to move because of COVID. His girlfriend is there. She has a different diagnosis, does not drive, and works part-time, but she has SSI. And I was saying, why doesn't he have SSI? And they both were saying no, because he's higher functioning and he can drive and he can work. So he is not eligible for SSI. Is SSI, is there like a test of like how much of a disability you have and then you qualify? Do you know? I'm just asking.
Yeah, to qualify for SSI, you have to show that you can't work.
You can't work.
Unable to work, right? So if you're not able to work due to your disability, then you'd be able to qualify for it.
Okay, well, that's really interesting.
So
okay, well, that's a game changer for me.
I mean, I had a client where the parents really tried to get it, and the judge said, sorry, you have to show that she's unable to work. So
we're trying so hard in the autism community to make it so that all individuals can work a job. I guess it's the other person was saying she works, but it's part-time and she still gets her SSI. So you can't work full-time and you get your, okay.
You can work a certain amount of time, and the goal is to make everyone work. So the question, it's a balance, like how much support do you need and how much work can you do? So it's a little bit of a balance in that respect.
All right, got it. I'm sorry, I derailed us, but it was on my mind the last 24 hours. Okay, so we were talking about the things that we can do, because I think it's so stressful for a parent when our kids are about to make a transition. We always want to know, like, what's the bag of tricks? What else can we do? So you were saying, look at government support and make sure that our medical is in order. What else can we be doing, Claudia, to prepare our kiddos for this transition?
Well, you want to look at each area. I'll give you another example. Selective services. If you have a male child that's 18, they must apply to selective services. Now I'll get a parent saying, well, my child's not going to the Army. That's ridiculous. Right. So, well, this is a wait list. It's a law in the United States that any 18-year-old male, there are a few things like if they're living in some kind of residential setting, then they don't. But you have to apply for it by law, and it's actually punishable. But more interesting, and I don't know if people get punished for it or not, I have no idea. But what's more interesting is that you have to apply to it to qualify for some grants. So many of our children are going into college and might want to apply for financial support, federal financial support. And if you don't apply until the age of 26, you can't apply after that. So it's done between 18 and 26. After 26, you can no longer apply. And then if your child is still trying to get some federal funds at that point, they wouldn't be eligible.
Okay, so this becomes a really important thing. I know I was told, because we just had to go through this, I was told that you apply and that, they haven't used the selective service in many, many years, but should they have a need to start it again, that at that point you would be able to ask for, I don't know whether they called a hearing or whatever, where you would go in and provide evidence of why it was not appropriate for your child. And that is a pretty, that even the last time they did it, that it's, the truth of the matter is that our armed services, whether you identify as being disabled or not, if you have an autism diagnosis, they are not supposed to take you at this time. So if you have a diagnosis somewhere, what I've been told is you will be declined.
Right. Yeah. There's
So
it really is there's really no fear. It really shouldn't be a part of the picture. It just needs something. You do it online. It's really quick. And again, you want to do it before they're 18, much easier. A lot of these things are a lot easier to do as a parent before they're 18 and they reach the age of majority, because then they have to sign off after 18.
there we go. And I just learned for the first time that if you're filling out financial aid forms like the FAFSA for college, it's in there automatically. They say, it has your child already registered, and if not, would you like to use this document to do it? You check yes, and then you're pretty much done. Okay, so lots of things here for a parent to do, but you were making the case that you don't want to be starting this like on the eve of their 18th birthday.
Definitely not. Definitely not. You want to know. So you want to know, and you want to know what you want to do, what you need to do age by age, depending on your situation. I'll give you another document that's really needed. Summary of performance. Summary of performance is put together by the school before your child leaves school to talk about who they are, what their needs are. A lot of people leave school and don't have it, or they have one that isn't very good. And that's
why do we need this? Who do we end up giving this to? Why is this important? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, you can give it to, it's actually an IDA, it's part of the law.
Okay.
And it is probably there somewhere, most schools, because they know how to cover their, they need to. I mean, they know how to follow the law per se, but that doesn't mean that the document has what is best, has the information that is good for your child. You were talking about your son going to four-year college. He'll probably go into the disability offices there. A summary of performance could be something that could be put in the records there to help the school understand your child's needs, and what could best, help him through his college career. So that could be one place, or even an adult program where you're trying to get some more help, or even an employer if the individual wants to be open about their disability. It's just a document that kind of rounds up who you are, your skills, what your needs are, and so forth. And if you leave school, either at graduation or 22, and then you go, oh, wait, I want it. What are the chances that you're going to go back to the school and they're going to do what you want them to do? They have a hard enough time doing it when you're in there. So.
Okay. So on our checklist that we need to get that before they graduate, who would we ask that for at the school? Whoever is the case manager?
Yeah, the case or the counselor or what have you. Different schools probably have different people that take care of that. So
we have a question back about the SSI. When can you apply for SSI? Is there an age restriction?
The short answer is no. You can apply at any time, even before 18. But what they use is the financial records of the parent prior to 18. So if you do not qualify as a family for Social Security, then your child won't, because he's still a child. After 18, it's based on your child's financial situation. So you kind of want to make sure your ducks are lined up, so to speak. For example, is there a bank account for your child? If your child has money in his name, then he's not going to be able to qualify for SSI. So you want to do things like ABLE accounts, for example, and special needs trusts and things like that.
But even as we're talking about all this, it really what the message that I'm getting here, because I go, oh, there's a lot to keep track of. That there's a very good reason why you've created the consulting service that you have, because rather than having to keep track of all of this for yourself and know all the ins and outs, why not take Claudia's course or work with her so that you've got somebody in your corner who knows that, been there and done that. I think that some of these things, when we go through certain hoops now, it's like, how many times are you going to do this? You're only going to go through the transition once, and you're going to learn so many things by the time you go through it once that's going to be useless information to you, but useful to somebody else. Claudia's already got it for you. So if you're feeling that, that I'm feeling right now, save yourself the time and agita and contact Claudia and say, yes, I need some help with this. Because it's what I'm hearing is that it's going to be slightly different for everyone.
It is.
that when I think of the difference between my son and Nancy's son and what they need and the questions that we have, we couldn't be at the same meeting together. You know what I mean? We would have different things, although there would be things in common.
Right. There's an umbrella. And then you
Yeah.
kind of go into different roads depending on the individual, the family, the state. I mean, there's so many variables, but there is an umbrella.
So this is why you call your course The Right Path. Tell us a little bit about, how do people register for this, and like how many weeks is it? Are you there with other people? Talk to us about The Right Path.
So I've made it really simple. You can go on my website, claudiacares.com, and it's called The Right Path. Just click on it, you'll see it, and you'll have some information, and you can click and purchase it that way. It is a self-guided course. You do it at your own time, at your own pace. But what I've done, and it won't take that long. I've done is a series of very short videos, maybe 2-3 minutes long, so that you can have the information, figure out if that pertains to you. I have a workbook that goes alongside it that you could jot the notes that you need. So let's say your child is 13 years old, and you're watching the one about guardianship, and you look it up and find out what it is in your state. So I give the document there so you could look up what is available in your state, and you go, oh yeah, that may be something I need to do. You could write it down inside your workbook and refer to it later. I also have another sheet where age by age, what you should do at each age, so that you can just sort of set it up, maybe put up some reminders in your own calendar, but it's kind of all set up for someone to just have that information and be able to move forward.
Okay, well, that's remarkable. Do you feel comfortable telling us what the cost is for the course so that we can let people know?
Yeah, right now I have it at $49 a person. And
I'm telling you, like that's the best deal going, you guys. I mean, to already have the checklist so that you can just do the things that you have to do and not have to guess or wonder, or in the case of so many of us, pick me, like, finding out 5 years later, oh, I should have done that, and that could have made the difference. And then the guilt that you carry in a backpack on your back forevermore after that, for less than $50, I'm telling you. Tell them what the website is to go to, Claudia, again, so they can just do this.
It's Claudia Cares, CARES.com.
And then you also do consulting. So if somebody has something that's a bigger issue or like an extreme issue or something like that, they can pay for time just to consult with you personally, correct?
I do offer one-on-one consulting. So sometimes families, need a little more direction about them. The course is really a big oversight, and it was created with the attempt to make sure that people had all the basic information all under one umbrella and kind of be able to set it up. But yes, I do offer one-on-one consulting.
Now you're here in Southern California, but you said you deal with people all over, right? That you have different states. So it doesn't matter if you're in Texas or New Jersey, you can take the course, The Right Path, and find the information that you need to find. Well, Claudia, honestly, thank you so much for being a resource for families and for making it cost effective, because I think a lot of people are really at sea, and I think it's a difficult time because, I mean, look, our kids are running different races, right? And as parents, I know I'm tired. My son is 17 and I'm tired. And I always say that I want to be curious and I want to learn new things. But if it's something that I just have to learn once, no, I just want somebody to tell me what to do. If it's a computer program that I'm only going to use once, I don't want to be really efficient at running the computer program. I want to get out of it what I'm supposed to get out of it. And it's the same way with my son's life. I keep telling him over and over, because we're like having to learn all these new things. And I've said, yeah, you're not going to have to do this again. If we do this right, you only apply to college once. Yeah, you might apply to graduate school later on, but it's a set of lessons that are very unique to different periods in time in your life. And I have other friends who have kiddos on the spectrum where they're not college bound, but they have a whole other set of things that they're having to learn that I don't know about. So it just begs the fact that having an expert who knows which way is up, and I love the fact that you're also a BCBA, and so you get it on levels that a lot of people wouldn't get. We love
And
you, Claudia.
thank you. And just to kind of piggyback on that, my ultimate goal is actually to also create a course so that people know what the options are in adulthood, which this course does not have. And in addition, using my ABA background, helping parents with how to help their teenagers become more independent towards adulthood. So
We need that.
I'm just starting at this point, but this to me was the most important, having worked in adult services and families coming and going, huh, you know, and I
Yeah.
just, it's such an awful feeling that that's what I'm combating right now.
Claudia, I want to make sure that we connect you. At CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, they now have teen and adult centers, and I want to connect you with the folks that run those, because those families are always looking for resources like yours. And so I want to make sure, don't let me forget to connect you with those folks so that you can be on their resource list for families. They're always asking me, Shannon, who else do you have that knows things about this age range? And somebody says it needs a village to raise a child, and thank you all for that. Thank you, Claudia, for doing that. So again, Claudia, give us the website one more time.
ClaudiaCares.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today and for helping us with all this information.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, you take care.
You too.
Now, I don't know if we're able to get Nancy back now, so we're going to see if we can get her back, but I wanted to take just a second until we see whether we can have Nancy back to talk a little bit about next week and the next coming weeks. We've streamlined things a little bit at Autism Live here while we're continuing in COVID. I know many times we've heard or seen or it's been said, okay, we're rounding the corner, and we weren't really rounding the corner. So I don't want to say we're rounding the corner unless we see that we're rounding a corner. But I know that more and more people are getting vaccinated. And I know that this is a particular issue in the autism community, and there are lots of questions, and we're not going to avoid those questions. We're going to be asking those questions. But in order to get to some form of normalcy, it seems that there's a couple of things that are very true scientifically, and again, we're going to be looking to have scientists here on the show to share that information with you. But in order to get back to some semblance of normalcy, we have to be able to demonstrate that a larger portion of the community is immune to getting the disabling effects of COVID. My understanding, having spoken to an expert last night, is that the vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting the virus. It prevents you from getting the disabling aspects of the virus, which is why they're asking people, even if they've been vaccinated, to please continue wearing a mask, because that is going to be essential for quite a while to come. So couple of things that I want to bring home to you, that we are going to double down here at Autism Live and continuing to provide you programming, and especially for distance learning, because we anticipate distance learning for the next 2 months in most locations. So we want to continue to be talking about how we can get the most out of distance learning. But somebody wants to know, how can you submit a question for Ask Dr. Doreen for a Q&A? I will tell you the best place to do that at this point in the show is to go to our website, autism-live.com, and there is the chat button. If you put your questions in there when we're not live for Ask Dr. Doreen, that's where I take the starter questions when we start the show, before you guys start asking the list to put your question for that. And thank you for asking that. And then she will be back here next Wednesday, which brings me back full circle to what we were talking about. On Mondays, we on the show, for the foreseeable future until we're well and truly out of COVID, we're really focusing on the educational piece and what your rights are and some different choices that you can make. And so our guest is Bonnie Yates on Mondays. On Tuesday, we're Temple Grandin Tuesdays, either live or a recorded interview that we've done with Temple in the past. Wednesdays are Ask Dr. Doreen, where you can ask her questions live, or you can send them on our website ahead of time. And I do start with those questions. I always say to people, be persistent, because we cannot any longer get to all of the questions. So ask your question more than once. I do notice that, and I try to, pay attention to that and go, this person is asked more than once. Let's make sure we get this question in there. On Thursdays is sort of our mixed bag, where we have a lot of different types of guests, things that we think that will be helpful to you. And, we're always inspiration and information, right? And then on Fridays, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And so you get the news for the week, and we are featuring this year, while we're in COVID, we're once a month, we're featuring research, where we have one of our research people come and explain research. That's happening next week. And then once a month, we have Vince Redmond, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, who joins us to talk about things from that perspective, about what the feelings are and how we accept and move through the feelings, because there's a lot of feelings all over the map for all of us, having to do with the frustration of the daily life, right? Whether you're on the spectrum or you're someone who loves someone on the spectrum, there's life in general, and there's the frustration that comes with that. And then the frustration of the things that are in your way as a result of that diagnosis. And I want to point out that that is almost never the person or anything to do with the person who's on the spectrum. It's about how the rest of the world is dealing with it, right? And we need a place to be able to talk about that with. We're saying, hey, back to the Robinsons. And I'm sending hugs back to the person, Renee and Elvira, who sent hugs. So I just want to be clear that we're trying really hard in COVID to still bring you things that are relevant and important. But that means that you need to talk back to us and tell us what you need. I really go off of what I hear, either here or in the other places that I meet with parents. What parents tell me, look, the biggest problem that I'm having right now is X. And then I go, okay, who can I get in here to talk about that? So I really want to encourage you to up your interaction and tell us what you need. I also want to tell you that we're doing a big push this year that I'm so disheartened that I met someone online in December, and they were telling me all the things that they had been through with autism, and they were and we just like met and we're having this conversation. Somebody introduced us and they were like, I just wish there was a place that I could go and ask questions. Why does that not exist? And I was like, I host that. And they'd never heard of it. They'd never heard of Autism Live. So I don't know what else to do but to beg for you guys to help us. And the way that you can help us this year, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be a broken record, and I'm going to talk about it on every single show, is that we need for you to like us on Facebook. That's a big deal. So I'm begging you right now, if you haven't already, could you please like us on Facebook? I know it seems like a silly thing, and then if you could encourage, there's a place on Facebook where you can go in and ask the people that you know that are in your tribe if they would like like us on Facebook. And I know sometimes that's a hard ask, but the other thing that you can do is, and I've seen people do this a lot with great effect, is if you're watching and you see, today we were talking with Claudia, and if you know somebody who has a teenager and that they've been saying, my goodness, I just don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, all you need to do on Facebook is in the comments, type their name in, and then it says to them, you've been tagged in this, and then they will find us, right? So that's another thing that you can do. We are also asking that if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube page. It's a way that you will see what we're doing. You will occasionally get a message saying, we added new videos. They are not always anymore videos that we've done live. We've started adding content that we've done other places, and the only place you can find it is the YouTube channel. So please subscribe to us on YouTube. The other thing that you can do that is a big deal and allows more people to see us is review us on iTunes. And it doesn't even have to be lengthy, but we find that, if 5 people review us in iTunes this week, then that means that approximately, 50,000 more people will see and hear about the shows. And remember, it's free So we want people to be able to hear and watch and see. And we just really need you to do that with us. If you like what you see here, I love Amanda. I just love you. And she says, I post links all the time. There are so many people now who try and deter new parents from ABA. Every time I share in my local group, people say how horrible ABA is. Yes, and I hear that. And I appreciate you for continuing to post it. That is part of the issue, is that we're trying to overcome people's preconceived notions. And if you think about it, I just want to ask you, who gains? Who gains when we bad talk good quality ABA? Because I mean, there were always people who were detractors from ABA, but it wasn't a big time business. And now that insurance has to pay for it, it's a big time business. People tell you, oh, you don't want to do that. Your insurance company is going to give you $120,000 worth of something that will help your child. You don't want that. Why would you want that? Yes, there's a law that says your insurance company, but it's bad for your child. Yeah. And we have a lot we have to do to show parents, because, I'm just being honest, being real here. There's some bad ABA out there, and it makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me want to throw up. And part of my mission is to let caregivers know, here's what good ABA looks like. Here's what schlocky ABA looks like. And you want the good ABA. Don't let them pass you off on the schlocky ABA. Quality BCBA are vital to business. They absolutely are. Thank you for saying that, Abani. It absolutely is. But there is a regulatory board that makes sure that BCBAs are good quality. We just need more of them, but they're coming. Colleges and universities have been upping their game for good quality ABAs, and they're coming. They're coming down the path. We're going to have more. Not soon enough, but soon. But I think it's really important that everybody has been sold this bill of goods. Everybody says parents don't want to do the full prescription. And you know why? Because people sit down and they go, well, what we'd like to do with your child, with your 3-year-old, is do a 40-hour program. And the parent goes, I know. I said when it was my turn and I sat in that seat, I was like, you're out of your mind. He's not even 3. 40 hours is a full-time job. I don't want to do that. That's crazy. And by the way, everybody in my family, none of them autism experts, said, that's crazy. You're out of your mind. Don't do that. He's going to hate you when he grows up. Fortunately, I met a family who was already doing it, and I saw their kid was doing amazing. And we went all in. And then we had to fight for it because they were like, 30 will be enough. No, 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 no. You told me he should have 40. So I'm going to stand here and I'm going to fight for the 40. Because why would I give him less than what you said he really could? Well, nobody really wants to do 40. Well, that, right? Just that. Because if that's what he needs, then that's what we're going to do. And I am in a place right now where I can say with all authority, that was exactly what he needed. And it saved him, saved our lives. And I'm in the catbird seat where we're getting college acceptance letters now. So I can only tell you where I've been. And I can only tell you how important it is, right? But you have to ask yourself, these people who are trying to talk me out of what science says is good for me or my kid, what is their motive? Because right now we fought so hard for insurance companies to pay for it. And most of you have the ability to have your insurance company pay for it. But people are actively talking you out of it on a daily basis. And some of them are doing it meaning well, saying, you're right, 40 is a lot. 40 isn't, can you do 20? Let's commit to doing 20. Well, 20 is better than doing nothing. Sure, it absolutely is. But how about if I gave you a prescription for an antibiotic? And I said to you, here's the full antibiotic. And if you want the desired results, you have to take the full antibiotic. But you know what? It's hard to. It's hard to take the full amount of antibiotic because it is. I forget on a daily basis. So you know what? Take half. Let's just see. Let's just see what happens. Maybe it'll be okay. You would be like, what? That doesn't sound ethical to me. So anyway, this is so quality and BCBAs are vital to business and genuinely should want to help children. This is what I mean. Some BCBAs are not knowledgeable and don't know how some have become board certified. And it's 11:06. So we got to get off. But let me say this: if you have a BCBA that you think is behaving unethically or is not properly trained, there's a process that you can report them to the BACB. Go to babc.com, and there's a place where you can file a complaint, because there is a board that regulates them and will investigate. Like there is already a process for that. There should not be. Now, all BCBAs aren't as effectively trained as more experienced ones, but all of them should be working with mentors and have somebody who's helping them. But if you see somebody who is not up to snuff, don't take that. You don't have to report them. Go right to bacb.com and get right up. Yep. Yep, report them. Have that conversation, because that is there, and that is, we don't want unethical BCBAs. I'm out of time, and the week is at the end. But don't forget, if you miss anything during the week, we play a marathon on the weekend on Facebook of the shows that we show here on the show. So I love and adore all of you. I'm sorry that we went over, Traven, but I will see you on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one from you too. Bye bye for now.